morning and a warm welcome as we welcome you back to the Eskom Development Foundation's Business Connect Conference for 2022. I'm Gugulethu Mfupi, your host over the last 2 days as we commenced day one yesterday of the Business Connect Conference. Today, we are delighted to have you back with us as we look to build and expand on the foundation that we set just yesterday. We are glad for you to be here and, of course, welcome your ongoing participation and feedback, which is what many of you have been doing over the last 24 hours and including on day one's participation. Continue to give us a shout in the chat and tell us where you are, which city you're from, or town and village that you might be representing. Now remember that by participating on the platform, we've really made it worth your while in more ways than one. By actively earning points, by announcing who you are, where you're from, interacting in the gamification of the app, and of course also participating in the exhibition center and networking areas. You will be able to gather up points, taking you to the leaderboard where you could potentially win the Take-A-Lot vouchers worth 500 Rand that we announced just yesterday. Now, you might see at the top of your screen on the event portal that there are points that you can score. And as mentioned, the more activities you do, the more points you're able to earn. Now, this means that you earn points, as mentioned, from a variety of activities that you can participate in, from visiting the exhibition hall, asking questions, and doing the quick surveys that we will be pulling up. So as you participated yesterday, keep that action and activity going because we really are going to make it worth your while as entrepreneurs and key participants who have joined us on today's conference. Well, if you have any questions, we also want to strongly encourage you to use the Q&A function and our team will assist you. That's with regard to any technical gremlins that might make their way into the system or perhaps any further information and insight that you require in order to navigate your way across the platform. Well, as mentioned, we do have a leaderboard, and yesterday we did pay great attention to who might some of the leaders be on the leaderboard. And for you to also see who the leaders are, I do kindly request that you make your way to the homepage. Do take a look at the Q&A session, and of course, certainly also unpack through gamification. That's where you can actually see some of the leaders. I don't want to spoil it, but do note that by actively participating once more again today, you will be able to influence how the leaderboard changes. And just a quick update on who we are seeing on the leaderboard for the moment. 5 names that are up so far, but only 4 vouchers that are up for the running. We do see the likes of Gidiboni Sekgole at number 4, Herbert Nenweli at number 3, Maurice McCurr slipping down to number 2 after being at number 1 yesterday. And the new number 1, currently sitting at 65 points, is Nature Khoza. So if you want to give Nature and a few other participants a run for their money, do be sure to make sure that you participate in earning your points throughout the course of the day. And you could be in the running for those lucky vouchers. Well, if you're joining us today, again, we are delighted to have you with you and do want to mention that we are quite looking forward to your participation. Much more than that, we do want to make sure that you do not share your contact details in the public chat service that speaks and applies to your name, full name, your email, as well as any personal information that you share. We'd rather prefer that you share that directly when interacting and networking with some of your peers so that you are clear and able to identify who you're sharing your information with, as this is in line with the POPI Act. So, now that we've set the theme and the tone for today, I do want you to continue sharing your feedback with us in the chat service. Share your excitement, the applause, and perhaps even the feedback and highlights that you want to share with us that you experienced just yesterday. But speaking of those highlights, and perhaps if I can take you back to this foundation that we set. As mentioned, this 2-day conference is really focused on 2 particular themes. Skills development, which we highlighted yesterday, which really took a look at the various aspects that entrepreneurs need to be cognizant of when building, establishing, and of course, advancing in their business growth. We touched on the fundamentals and basics of making sure that you start off with a brand positioning, speaking to the purpose, passion, and of course, point of departure that really does influence how it is that your brand does show up when you're trying to communicate with your clients and various stakeholders. We interlinked that with some feedback that we heard from Miles as well. Miles Kubeka, the founder of Vuyos, who shared with us that when you have an idea and you want to go into the world of entrepreneurship, ultimately, you just need to start. Failure might happen, but don't take it personal and continue to find new ways of digitizing your business and finding solutions that can be solved or accentuate your growth by using technology. We also had Maya Fisher-French, well-known financial expert who gave us some insight and a very clear reality check that we need to manage our money better. Separating your business and personal accounts, ensuring that you're able to account for your various structures of finances by budgeting adequately, and going back to basics of having various savings pockets, finding new and effective ways of minimizing any risk towards you or your assets in your business, and of course, engaging actively with your accountant to really get a clearer perspective of the performance of your finances. And last but not least, Tebe Igalafeng wrapped it up for us by reminding us how it is that we can build incredible teams around us, ensuring that the hands, head, and heart all speak to the ethos and purpose of the business that you are building. It's a journey, it takes time, and most likely you'll only find that 10% of your workforce will be committed to the bigger picture. But toss out the script perhaps when it comes to the technicalities of recruiting staff in your business and really go back to the ethos and the character of the individuals that you're looking to recruit who will embody the story, the why, the purpose, the vision of your organization. Well, with that foundation that's been set so far, we're looking forward to building up on this, where today we'll be expanding primarily by taking a look at how best we can build sustainable businesses, what it takes, and we'll learn more about this from various entrepreneurs who will be joining us in conversation, and also taking a look at the one challenge that many entrepreneurs tend to focus on: money. Access to capital and financing opportunities. And today we'll be speaking to a few leaders from various institutions to really get some clarity as to the kind of capital that might be available in the market that will help you grow your business. So continue sharing just a few of the highlights that we'll be sharing with you throughout the course of the day, and of course with the rest of the audience. But I hope that you're excited. I certainly am, and we're looking forward to your feedback within the chat service. But perhaps let's get straight into it now. Yesterday, at the beginning of the program, we spoke to the Business Investment Competition overall winner from 2020, Mampo Sochongaye, who inspired a lot of you by just reminding us of the hard work that's required and risks that you need to take as an entrepreneur. Today, we have Rachel Khafane, who is the overall winner of 2021, and I promise you, you need to get ready to be even more inspired. We'll take a look at this new crop of young female entrepreneurs who are certainly taking the lead and winning, and certainly feedback on the insights that they'll be able to share with you. But I guess as we introduce Rachel, let's begin by setting the theme and, of course, a very clear understanding of what her business does, how it operates, particularly within the steel and in engineering and environment that we know of in South Africa. Let's take a look at this opening video to ensure that we provide you with clarity as to who Rachel is before we engage with her in conversation.
My name is Rachel Khafane. I'm from a company called Dentu Group. We do steel components manufacturing and steel fabrication for the automotive and engineering industry. We design using the CAG software systems that designs. We manufacture according to the ISO standards, and then we supply. It doesn't end there. We also take the client's products and we do refurbishment after life. I am passionate about making a change in this industry. I saw it's very traditional and conventional, so I wanted to bring the young, youthful and innovative way of manufacturing. I am also passionate about bringing change in how the artisans are treated in this industry by giving them more employee benefits and making change in their lives and employing more people. It feels amazing to be part of the finalists this year, so it means I am doing something right.
Well, she's doing something right, all right. And to tell us more about her business, her journey, and of course, the phenomenal experience that she's had so far under the BIC competition, we joined here in studio by Rachel. Delighted to have you with us, Rachel. Welcome, and thanks for keeping us company today.
Thank you so much.
I must say, seeing you within your element, with the tools and the machinery moving around, it really does seem like quite a task that you undertake as an entrepreneur, primarily within the steel and manufacturing environment in South Africa. For those who perhaps still don't fully grasp and comprehend what Danchi Group does, how you do it, and the kind of capacity that you have on board, give us a little bit more detail. Paint and add some color to this picture for us.
Okay, so we are based in Silverton in Pretoria, and we do steel manufacturing. So we have 3 product offering. The first one being the steel components manufacturing, which we cater to the automotive and engineering sector, where we manufacture bushings for cars, pins, pivots, bases. The second offering that we have is just your custom steel fabrication, where we make your columns, your beams, your scaffolding for the construction industry. And the third offering that we have is your steel refurbishment, where we take our existing clients' products, like your steel columns and scaffolding, and they bring back to us, and we refurbish. We sandblast, take off the dust, and repaint for them to reuse and save money and save the planet at the same time. Yes.
Sounds like a phenomenal opportunity, and one can imagine just how industrious it is. And as you say, B2B business operations that you participate in. Before we talk about the competition, for those who perhaps still aren't familiar, help us understand just brief background as to how you started in this industry, and of course, given that you have such a large base of customers, how you reached out, interacted, and were able to build on the customer base that you actually supply.
Okay, well, Google, it has been a very long journey. We started in 2017, and then we were just retailing steel material. We didn't have anything. All we had was just a desk, an office desk, and we were just buying and selling material. And from there, I started learning about the industry, going around and just chatting to people,
So you've always been inquisitive.
Very, very. Yeah. And my dad has been in the steel industry for 40 years, so he's the inspiration behind everything. He used to come at home with drawings and everything. And I was fascinated, but, as a black woman, I was not motivated or, to follow this passion. I instead went the accounting route,
But that's not a bad place to start, right? And maybe we can also talk about that, how those additional skills in accounting, finance, actually assisted you in your entrepreneurial journey, because one thing we know as an entrepreneur, you need to know the numbers.
It worked for me. It worked for me, I always say, for me, landing a new client or coming up with a presentation is very easy, numbers are concerned, all I need to do is just get a client to give me a chance, and then I've got it. I know I got it.
So the secret is clearly in the numbers for you, Rachel, as you say, because you have a clear understanding of the business. You also have a clear understanding of how to make the numbers work out. But let's talk about the competition. And for many, we might be wondering, what actually motivated you and encouraged you to actually participate in the 2021 BIC competition?
Yeah. So I've always seen it, seen the advertisements and everything, but I didn't think I had a chance to win, because you get so invested in running a business that sometimes you work so hard you don't even see the progress, and in 2020, actually, that was my first attempt, and
in the midst of a pandemic.
That was my first attempt, and it was chaotic, because there was a lot of things that they required from me, compliance and business plan. Like the last time I worked on a business plan was 2017, so I had to go back and do all that. So it was a nightmare, and I ended up not complying or sending the relevant information in time. And I was a finalist though, but I think maybe.
But that must be nerve-wracking, and maybe even knocks at your confidence, because then you think, well, I entered this competition, I really had ambitions of winning, and now though I'm a finalist, there's still some parts that perhaps I haven't sorted out. What kept you going, and did you think that you would win?
I actually felt like I was going to win the 2020, and I immediately knew that the compliance stood in the way and not having the necessary documents in time. And 2021, I made sure everything was there. I actually applied, towards the end of, the deadline, and but everything was there. Click, 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 click. Everything was there, and I was like, I got this.
Exactly. And that tells us something, because as you're explaining, and it's very similar to what Mampo was sharing yesterday, that when she entered, it was submitted very late, and the deadline was at midnight. She submitted just after 11. And that tells us something, that as an entrepreneur, if you do see an opportunity, do persist, even though things might not be working favorably, or you might be limited on time, resources, or even compliance, like you say, but there's always an opportunity to fix things. And that tells us something about, I guess, the growth and the opportunity that you wanted to tackle in participating in this competition.
Yeah, I actually actually was laughing when I was watching Mambo. And I was like, you and me both,
Yeah.
Yeah, we get so consumed in running the business that, sometimes you overlook opportunities, So what I always do is if I see something that is very interesting and I see an opportunity, I put a reminder, and unfortunately I put it at the last minute, to remind me just 11:30 at night.
Sounds like you need just a little bit of stress in your life to push you over the edge to get you to do the stuff that you need.
I enjoy pressure.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs might be able to relate to that.
Yeah,
and maybe we can reflect on that very briefly when it comes to your journey, but also coming back to the participation in the program and the competition. As you say, you're the 2021 winner, so congratulations. I do also want to encourage the audience members who might be watching to also share their congratulations with us in the chat service. And you've also won a wonderful capital cash injection of 300,000 Rand. Not something to scoff at, especially during these times. The big money question, what are you going to do with it?
Sure, I'm spending all of it to buy machinery. This industry, the machinery is very expensive. So I'm definitely using the money to purchase a machinery that I need to service this one contract that,
Makes sense.
They said I just need this one machine. And from there, I'll be able to hire 3 new permanent staff. So it's actually going to be, it's going to help me a lot.
Rachel, tell us more about that, because even in your introductory video, you speak very passionately about the artisans, giving them opportunities to grow, prioritizing their opinions and their feedback in the organization. How do you manage those people dynamics? And I think it ties into a conversation we had yesterday about making sure that you build a solid team.
Yes.
How have you done that?
My dad has been an artisan, and I have seen him being undervalued, where he was a key person at work, but, he wasn't getting any benefits and, he wasn't valued. And for me, that has always been a passion for me, that whatever business that I'm going to do, I'm going to empower employees, and that's what makes me happy. And, even my employees, they know every year I send, banks to come and have talks with them about financial planning. I encourage them to purchase houses, and they can also have consultants come over to the business and help them apply for houses and everything. And I say, get a house before you get a car, or before you get that account.
And that is so interesting, because you're assisting them not only within their respective growth within the organization, but even externally. Has that in itself translated into a change in attitude to their approach to work, and even being committed to working with Danshi Group? Yeah,
like we are a family. Like you would swear we are related. That's how we are. And, you get more productivity. Employees are happy. When they see you, it's just laughter, and you are able to also communicate when your business is not doing well to them, to say, guys, I think this month is going to be tough, and they can actually sympathize with you and be like, okay, we're with you because you are a team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to get into some of those challenges that you mentioned just a moment ago, but I must tell you, Rachel, looking at the chat service, everyone is excited to have you with us, so thank you for the feedback that you continue to share. Angie Mabena saying, congratulations, very inspirational journey, can sense your fire. Also seeing a comment as well saying, yes, Rachel, keep going, and of course quite encouraged by your words. Tozi also saying, what an inspiration, congratulations, Rachel. There's a lot more that I can go into. And maybe there's someone that you can work with here too. Albert Lubisi saying that he's in the automotive industry, particularly supply chain, needs a very serious transformation. So well done to you, Rachel, there too. And maybe we can talk about that, Rachel, as you touch on employee wellness and a few of the other themes that we've discussed earlier today. If we do go back to some of those challenges, as mentioned, it's not only access to capital, access to markets, as you said, managing your team during a time of crisis and through the pandemic. Maybe take us into what those experiences were like, how you navigated those particular challenges, and perhaps there's some lessons that we and the fellow entrepreneurs on the line can actually learn from your experience here.
Access to markets, most difficult. I'm black, I'm young, I'm female. and
Some might say those are opportunities, but as you say, also potentially threats.
And I'm in the steel industry, which is dominated by males who are older, and who are white. So already I've got odds against me.
Yeah.
And like you said, I've heard comments that it's actually opportunities, but it's very difficult, because you constantly have to prove yourself. You have to work 3 times harder than your normal person, and it's difficult to get, like government tenders. People just assume that because you've got all these 3 factors, you'll get a tender just like that. But we've got things like corruption that is happening. You need connections. I've applied to more than 700 tenders, and I've never even got one.
Goodness.
I've applied. I've attended seminars, regarding how to tender successfully and all of that. So I know how to tender. But, I have learned, sometimes it's just all of these barriers that I hear. And then when it comes to the private sector, you find, the side where they don't think you can do the job. But I've learned to use what is deemed as weaknesses to my advantage. I go to side briefings with my pink hard hat to say, yes, I'm female, with my shiny glitter pen, to say, yeah, I am a girly girl, But, I'm here to learn, teach me, and then, when you are like that, and you're saying, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm here to learn, people are more welcoming, and some just want to show off the experience and all of that, and you create relationships from there, and then once you get your foot through the door, that's when you show them flames. You show them what you're made of.
I like that. You learn from them, and then it's almost like that lesson regarding the student then overtaking the master, perhaps. But that's a very important point that you mentioned. And yesterday it also came up in terms of not only building a solid team, but presenting your brand authentically. And that's exactly what you've done by showing up authentically. And that's contributed to how you're able to access new networks, experience a sense of skills transfer, and also a great amount of mentorship. For someone perhaps who is in a sector like yours, dominated by individuals perhaps that they might struggle to meet and interact with, how do you encourage them to continue building on those networks, seeking mentorship, and most importantly, being open to learn? Because when we're entrepreneurs, we tend to think, well, this is my business, I know what's going on, I'm in control of it, and sometimes you need a different opinion. What are your words of encouragement to other entrepreneurs to be open to networking and skills transfer?
Yeah, it's okay, to say, I don't know this, it's okay, and sometimes when you are overly, you're trying to prove that you're smart, or you appear as arrogant, and no one wants to work with an arrogant, person. You just need to humble yourself so that you can learn the ropes and go knocking, go talk to people, You'll be so shocked at how much people are willing to take small businesses under their wings as long as they come looking for assistance, and there are associations like the steel industry associations, you've got the metal industries, you've got exhibitions that are happening. Go and network and meet like-minded people, and you will find mentorship. You will find people that are willing to transfer skills and help you get your business there.
Definitely. Bongani coming forward and saying, Rachel, fall forward. Olivia saying, Rachel, love the attitude and persistence. And Olivia also adding there, keep showing flames, girl. So as you say, learning, contributing, being open-minded. And what's beautiful is that not only are you gaining this experience from individuals who are more experienced, internalizing it in your organization, but also paying it forward when it comes to your artisans as well. But I do want to tie this back by getting into the competition, because we have a few entrepreneurs who might still be considering whether or not they should enter Eskom's business investment competition and join the Business Connect forums and conversations that we've been having. But how have you found that entering the competition, trying your luck, just going for it, has actually contributed to the growth of your organization? So in other words, what have you learned, or what have been the outcomes for you and your organization from participating in this initiative?
You get invested in running the business, that you overlook a lot of things. So entering these kind of competitions, they kind of make you look at the business, and work on the business, because they ask the right questions, and...
But the right questions are uncomfortable, right, Rachel? It's like what Maya was telling us yesterday about money. It makes you think, ooh.
They are, but once you face them, you are helping yourself, you are helping the business, competitions like this, platforms like this, they help you scale up your business, see your business as, something that you will be able to sell at a later stage, not just you running a business as an artisan, because that's what, we as entrepreneurs make the mistake of. We are so invested in the business that we are working in it instead of steering the ship and, just looking at icebergs and, just looking at your business, 5 years. So they get you thinking and get you to plan ahead.
Yeah, and that's quite important to make sure that you're able to plan ahead, because ultimately that's what we want with most businesses, to be able to grow, to be able to scale, access new markets, and at some point, perhaps if it is envisioned, then to sell off that business to other parties or counterparts that you're able to interact with. But I'm excited, Rachel, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are not only quite confident about the growth that they can attain, but also intimidated. And I say this because our next panel is going to focus on building a sustainable business. As you say, you have inherited the reins from your father, you continue networking with a few other players in the industry, and you continue attracting the right staff to build a solid team. But how do you envision Danchi Group being a sustainable business in future that will still be relevant, not only to the South African market, but heck, why not the world?
We initially our name was Danchi Projects, and we started rebranding, because we started looking at, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and we were looking at, how South African, market is changing, and we're specifically looking at the automotive. Like, there's so much investment that is happening in the automotive sector.
Yes.
And we wanted to be part of that, because a lot of products are being sourced from, overseas. We need to have, workshops that produce parts. If you're making a Ford car, you must secure all the products locally.
Exactly.
So I wanted to be part of the transformation, and that's where I'm directing the whole company towards. We need to start manufacturing components to supply to, this industry.
So would you say one of the key secrets to building a sustainable business for Danchi Projects, Danchi Group, would be actually following the lead of what your suppliers actually require, or rather your clients and customers are actually looking for, and finding ways then of adapting to how best you slot in there?
Absolutely. It's very important to look at also, the direction of, the market, the economy, So we are always not looking at, what's happening in the world, what's happening with South Africa. So you constantly have to align your business to the current affairs, the current situation, the current economics. So that has given me a competitive advantage, over the years, because I keep, ahead of what's happening, ahead of the competition.
Exactly. Soon you'll be telling us about making catalytic converters and all the others, but I know that's for platinum projects, so maybe that will come in through in the future, and of course some of those experiences that you've had. I do want to remind those of you who are joining us online that first and foremost, thank you for joining us for day 2 of Business Connect, and of course sharing your feedback and interaction as we're speaking to Rachel today about her journey as the 2021 winner of the business BIC competition that she's participated in. We also are affording you the opportunity to share your questions with us. So do, as you're viewing this online, do make sure that not only do you share your feedback in the chat, but that you also use the Q&A session and section of this particular platform to ask your question to Rachel. Interact with more of the panelists that we'll be speaking to today, and address your questions to them directly in terms of lessons, learnings, and of course perhaps some suggestions and feedback that you'd like to solicit from them. And that raises quite a few points that we do see. Nature Cause are coming back to say reinforcing strategies towards improving is an outcome that you've mentioned, and that's proven to be quite critical. And of course Maureen saying, Rachel, you've inspired us as young people to keep up the good work. So congratulations to you there. And maybe this is a wonderful space as well, Rachel, just for us to discuss those dynamics regarding advice. And that's a very heavy word, right? Because your experience perhaps might not match with that of several counterparts in the industry or others who are within your industry. But if you had to give most entrepreneurs who are listening today advice perhaps that is not often shared, but that is critical for them to understand, what would that be?
I would say, start looking at your business as, like I said, a business that you would sell. Looking at your business, would somebody be interested in buying your business? We sometimes just run a business because we just want to, make ends meet, or we've got passion for this, but there's no direction. So, once you start, putting processes in the business, start looking at your values, putting everything in place, the production, the whole organization, you are able now to see the growth, because now you have a plan. You have a plan. This is what I'm going to do from A to B. And then from this, it becomes a scalable business, and, you can sell it, and venture into something else, know. So that's how you will realize growth. Treat your business as you would, sell it to another person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's also talk about the challenges that come about with that. And this is also reviewing perhaps the global perspective or the macroeconomic perspective. We're well aware the steel industry has been under significant pressure, facing potential imports. Pricing has also been a dynamic. And also, given that we just come from a pandemic, some businesses are still reeling from the effects of the lockdown, right? And certain restrictions there. How have you navigated the ebbs and flows? As you say, you started your business in 2017. I can imagine what a roller coaster ride it's been since then, as many entrepreneurs would be familiar with. But how have you navigated that? And I guess what learnings as well have you experienced out of these challenges too?
Yeah, it's been very tough, especially during the pandemic, but through the midst of chaos, there's always opportunities. That's one thing that I've learned, We started looking at manufacturing sanitizer stands at that time so that we can keep our business operating, So you must always look at, plan B. You must look at opportunities in the midst of chaos, Everything happens, and through the midst of everything happening, there is an opportunity. Yeah.
There's always an opportunity. And many people there, as you say, Rachel, saying not only are they keen to explore the opportunities that exist, but there's also a comment from Nomhle Nklapo going back to what you mentioned about looking at your business as an opportunity for you to scale, to sell it off, and pursue other opportunities in future. Nomhle saying that's a powerful yet unpopular point there, to look at your business as an enterprise that you do want to sell in future. Well, there are a few questions that have come through, and a few of you are quite excited to go into the exhibition center. And of course, this is where you will have the opportunity to interact with several of your peers, engage and gain more insight into individuals that you might be able to network with. And of course, some of you quite keen on understanding how Rachel mentioned process. Kindly give us an update on some of those processes. Well, that question not entirely clear, but we will go back to Rachel just to get some feedback on that. And Rachel, another question that's come through that says, what would you say to someone that has a fear of getting into the male-dominated industry as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. We live in a world now where women are doing, are not limited anymore. If a man can do it, why can't you do it? As long as you've got passion to do it, just go ahead and do it. And sometimes, we look, there's a saying, look at the glass half full than half empty. If it's a male-dominated, instead of looking at it as it's going to be hard for you, you're going to stand up. Already you've got points. You're standing out.
With your pink hard hat and your glitter pen.
You are standing, so use that to your advantage, And just like I always say, get in, and start showing flames.
Exactly. Get in and start showing flames. So that's definitely what people do want to know. Yeah. I do want to go back to the question very briefly about processes, but I do understand that we are under pressure for time. So if you did submit that question, please feel free to elaborate on it in the Q&A, and there will be an opportunity for us to reach out to Rachel after this, and she can share feedback on the platform as well. But Rachel, it's been phenomenal speaking to you. Thank you once again for reminding us about, I guess, the basic things that entrepreneurs do go through in terms of challenges and opportunities. Always being free and open to taking a risk and participating in competitions, initiatives, and ways to advance your business. Managing compliance, which we know is quite critical and was also brought up yesterday. And of course, reinvesting in your team. ultimately, these are the individuals who, together with their hands, heart, and of course heads, do contribute to the economic outcomes and financial outcomes of your business. We wish you nothing but the best. We look forward to seeing those 3 new staff members in your new video, and of course the new machinery that you'll also show us, right?
Yes.
We'll hold you to it.
Thank you so much, Kiki.
Right? We'll hold you to it. Thank you so much, Rachel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, if you want to be like Rachel and have yourself be featured in this hot seat here, remember that the BIC 2022 entries will be announced on the Eskom Development Foundation's Facebook and Twitter pages later on in the year. So make sure that you follow these pages and that you don't miss out on information that can be shared with you today. Well, perhaps if you are still trying to get some insight on the growth, the prospects of scaling your business, primarily like what we've seen with Rachel from Danchi Group, here's a quick reminder of where she's from, how she started, and of course why she's our winner for 2021.
My name is Rachel Khafani. I'm from a company called Danchi Group. We do steel components manufacturing and steel fabrication for the automotive and engineering industry. We design using the CAD software systems that does designs. We manufacture according to the ISO standards, and then we supply, and it doesn't end there. We also take the client's products and we do refurbishment for afterlife. I am passionate about making a change in this industry. I saw it's very traditional and conventional, so I wanted to bring the young, youthful and innovative way of manufacturing. I am also passionate about bringing change in how the artisans are treated in this industry by giving them more employee benefits and making change in their lives and employing more people. It feels amazing to be part of the finalists this year, so it means I am doing something right.
Well, that was a reminder of the video that we shared with you from Rachel today, and she is the 2021 BIC competition winner for the year. A reminder again that you can enter and that feedback will be shared with you on social media platforms. Well, we're about to shift gears, and I must say that as we just continue the focus very briefly on Rachel, the feedback has been amazing. Zanele Ngobo saying Womandla, and of course many saying Rachel, all the best, and the emojis, the feedback, the flames, keep them going. We love your energy today, so please let's maintain it throughout the course of today and keep the interaction coming as we now look to shift to our first panel discussion for today. Now, this particular panel discussion will focus on the staying power, how best to build a sustainable business. And as we're well aware, businesses do come and go every day. Failure rates are things that are numbers that we do need to accept and quite high. But the big question still remains as to what it takes to have staying power and grow your business over time. Well, to help us answer this incredibly important question, we're joined by 3 phenomenal entrepreneurs, each from very different backgrounds, each with their own journey, but most importantly, with some key lessons and insight that we're able to engage on and share with you today. If you do have any questions, a reminder that we will be taking your questions through the Q&A section of the chat, and of course, actively ask you to engage and participate as an entrepreneur who might want to be enlightened further on the journeys that our guests and panelists have walked and embarked on. I'd like to introduce my first of 3 panelists, Mr. Theo Baloyi, the founder of the sneaker brand Batu, who is also a qualified chartered accountant. So he clearly understands all about the rands and cents while having the passion and heart for being an entrepreneur within the creative and fashion space. We're also joined by Dineo Ranaka, well-known and popular radio host, entertainer, and businesswoman in her own right. She brings today the creative fire while understanding the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur within multiple sectors of South Africa's economy. Last but not least of this panel, we have Vere Shaba, founder and CEO of Green Design Africa. Now, this certainly means that as someone who operates within the green sector, or rather looking at environmental friendly solutions, primarily focused around engineering in the South African and continental economy, she certainly operates in a sector of the economy which does still call for ongoing drives to encourage the participation of young Black females and increasing the participation of individuals in that pool. Well, welcome to each of my speakers who are joining us today, all virtually. So I must say we're excited to have you with us and engaging us in this particular conversation. And there are a few facts and figures that we're going to deep dive into, particularly when it does come to the failure of businesses. But what I always find interesting, and what ties back to a theme that we unpacked yesterday with several of our speakers, is that businesses are fundamentally based on people. People who have journeys, people who have experiences, and people who, like you, become the leaders of your own institutions. So I'd like to start off with a very simple question, taking it back to how your entrepreneurial journey started before we do peel back at the layers of how you've actually built sustainable businesses. And Vere, I'd like to start off with you, perhaps if to kick off the conversation for us today. You have been publicly noted as saying that you started off in entrepreneurship completely by mistake. Had a great corporate job, but however did find a niche and an opportunity in the market for you to grow and expand your business. Vera, as you come on screen and unmute your mic, I'm hoping that you can share with us a very brief explanation of your journey into entrepreneurship and perhaps some of the hurdles you had to overcome in order to build a sustainable business for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And hi, everyone. It's very good to be part of this. So I think just in terms of my entrepreneurial journey, I am definitely an accidental entrepreneur. My background is in mechanical engineering, and I started off in multinational consulting firms for quite a long time. And then I just remember when I was 25, I was in a corporate job. They were saying, okay, maybe you can become, you can continue to grow within this corporate job. And then something in me was just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. It's not aligned with my vision, because I think a lot of the times corporate jobs kind of have this vision, but sometimes they leave Africa behind, and they leave quite a lot of people behind. And so I decided with 3 months salary, a LinkedIn profile and a car to just start my business. And now 6 years later, in terms of green buildings and engineering, we're currently working on about 300,000 square meters of buildings across the continent.
Wow.
And I think that for me, it really was just about the conviction. To be honest, now I'm 33. If I had to do that again, I'd say no. I'd never do it, because I think when I was 26, I had a lot of I had lots of guts to do it. But I think that the biggest thing that I would say that kind of got me into entrepreneurship is that I really felt that there was a problem that needed to be solved. And that problem was that, there was no African narrative about how we are fighting against climate change from an engineering perspective. And Africa is the most vulnerable continent to climate change. And that was my why. That was my driver. I think what's interesting is my business model slowly started to evolve after I took that first step. And so I think one of the greatest challenges that I probably had was that I didn't have a business model when I started my business at all. I remember kind of getting paid really little and trying to figure all of that out. But I think that slowly with time and after making lots of mistakes and getting back up every time one fails, I think entrepreneurs then continue to start building a more sustainable business.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been awarded as Forbes 30 Under 30 in business because of the impact that we're doing, as well as a lot of other Women in Property awards. And that's really just around, again, going back to a conviction, and then slowly really forming that business model and that revenue model and growing team and, networking. So yeah, quite excited to hear everyone else's stories and to hear some of the lessons that we'll all be sharing.
I must say, really appreciate you sharing your story. And I think the reality check, right, for many individuals, as you say, it's literally just an institution, an organization that was started out of faith, 3 months salary, a LinkedIn account, and some ambition and drive, which is really translated into a lot of growth. And perhaps, Dineo, I can come to you here, and you can also share with us how your entrepreneurial journey started, and perhaps even how you are one individual who knows how to find opportunity everywhere, from music to entertainment to television production to restauranting and food and hospitality. Girl, I think there's nothing you haven't done.
Good morning, everyone. I got frustrated. That's how it started for me. I truly got frustrated. I got frustrated with being an employee. I got frustrated with so many rules around how I should do certain things. You can call me a bit of a rebellion. I think we all know that by now. I got frustrated with the fact that I would look at my bank balance and look at what I feel I deserve to live like, and I look at the life that I want to live, And I'd be like, but I'd never reach that if I don't ever try to exploit the ideas that I have in my mind and also the ideas that are burning inside me. And I look at people that inspire me, that are running businesses. I remember when I was much younger in high school, I always looked at business women in the townships where I grew up and the neighborhoods where I was raised. And I'd look at them externally, they looked like they had everything together. They looked independent. There was a certain image and a certain way in which they carried themselves. And that really inspired me. And I'd be like, I want to be that sort of lady. When I look at my life now, I think I am that sort of lady. You know, I am living the life that I saw them externally living. But then internally now, when you look at what it takes to get there, quite a lot actually. Hey, I think we always look at the end result and we always desire, like we'll look at a Theo and we'll say, oh my gosh, he's got so many stores. I also want to have so many stores. And we look at his end result and we look at how he's won in that space. But we really get to pause and ask ourselves, what does it really take to have that many stores?
Yeah.
What does it really take to be a frustrated Dineo, to actually say, I'm done. I'm done with the radio microphone. I don't want it anymore. I literally want to be a TV producer and nobody's taking me seriously. So I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig and design this concept of a reality show so I can learn each and every aspect of what it takes to become a television producer and put yourself out there and pitch. And that's exactly how it started for me. Particularly, I'll speak on television production because as it stands, it's the longest running business that I have. And it's the most sustainable of all of them right now because I've gone through the kinks. I've gone through the failures of it. I've gone through, the daunting accountancy and loss of money and owing salaries and this, that, and the other and not complying and learning all of that. Because you must understand, I'm an A-class dropout. I've gone to so many schools. I've dropped out of marketing. I've dropped out of PR. I dropped out of psychology. I go to school, get a year of it, a year and a half, 2 years of it. I'm like, I'm out, and that's just how I've been with it. But the only educational institute that I've stayed in is the unorthodox, very hard hitting with very hard lessons to learn in real life lessons of actually being an entrepreneur. And that's the sort of educational institute that's been best beneficial for me. So I've learned all of the bad things. I've learned all of the failures, but all of those have been stepping stones to me learning that I have what it takes and I know how to lead and build team.
Sure.
I know how to look after team. I know how to service clients. I know how to look at my shortcomings and surround myself with people that really complement my shortcomings. I know the humility of saying you're not a jack of all trades within your own business and your business is not necessarily about you. I've learned the importance of people in business and how it's so important to have people that know more than you, that do better than you, that literally decorate you better than you and decorate your vision better than you. So really, truly, to answer your question, just started with rebellion and frustration to me. I was like, I need more, I want more, and I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to tell everybody else what to do, neither am I bossy, but I just really I want to get these ideas out of me. I want to sell them. I want them to be monetized, and I want to keep on growing them. And that's exactly how I landed myself in the hot seat of being an entrepreneur. Yeah. And trust me, it's literally egg sandwiches and broke days for a long time before you're actually able to have a company that can afford to even pay you the salary that you're on.
Very true. So many nuggets that you've shared there, Dineo, and we're certainly going to get into some of them in just a moment, but really appreciate the honest perspective, right? That it's about rebellion. It's about being authentic, which is exactly what you've done in terms of how you show up in your respective businesses. Theo, we're definitely coming to you, and I think what's quite beautiful about your story is, again, that it differs from what we've heard from our two other panelists. Background as a chartered accountant, working for one of the largest financial services and auditing firms in the country, let alone the continent, and yet still decided that, no, I'm going to start up a sneaker line called Batu at a time where international brands were way more popular and there was a lack of grooming of South African brands. Help us understand more about your journey, Theo, and of course, just where the energy, the drive, and motivation to become an entrepreneur really stemmed from.
Hi, Gugu. Morning, everyone. I think my journey is more about passion meeting reality. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I'm a product of opportunity. Throughout my journey, I've been awarded great opportunities. I've been mentored by great leaders. I've worked for great corporates, not only in South Africa, but abroad too. But then, having lived in Alexandra, being brought up in Alexandra Township, my reality, never changed. As far as my life was, I wanted great opportunities, and I, worked for great companies and so forth. And I could literally see my life changing, and I found myself on a secondment in the UAE, working for a PwC in Dubai. And oftentimes when I came back home, I realized that Alexandra is still the same, if not, it's getting worse. People are unemployed, and predominantly the youth. And oftentimes when you speak to our people in the townships, you realize that it's not because of they are lazy or anything else. I then began to realize that it's not everyone who got awarded the opportunities that some of us have been awarded, that have gotten over the years. So what am I going to do? Am I going to be in the UAE and look at everyone in Alexandra and say, you guys are lazy? Or am I actually going to quit the job, come back home and build with our people, And oftentimes when I went through and had conversation with my mentors and, wanted to thank them for all the opportunities and the guidance and whatsoever, they often said, what, Theo, we don't want anything from you. I've always been, my gratitude was met by one big ask. And the ask was, pay it forward. We don't want anything from you. Just pay it forward in whatever way that, you think you can pay it forward, So my passion at the time was that I used to love a lot of sneakers. I self-proclaimed sneakerhead, and I was traveling a lot between the UAE and, South Africa, and obviously coming back home for festive season, Christmas, to visit family and so forth. End of 2015, I had such a valuable collection, and when I looked at the brands within my collection, I couldn't find a sneaker brand that resonated with an African narrative, that comes from Africa. And when I did my research, I realized that we've got about 7 continents in the world, and each and every continent has a fair presentation of a footwear brand. But when I came down to Africa, I couldn't find one footwear brand that resonated with Africans, that represented Africa in that scale, and representing Africa in terms of product development, sneaker technology. We can even take it further to CSI. And my reality was that people in my township are unemployed. So how about that I put the two together and try to build a sneaker brand, number one, that Africans can proudly affiliate with. And while doing that, reignite hope and create sustainable jobs, because that was, the challenge that I've seen, that we had not only in my township at the time, but as a country, And 5 years later, we are the brand that we are today, with over 30 stores and 300 people employed in the business.
Exactly. And Thea, I must say, even Danielle commented on the number of stores that you've opened up. I guess even a number of stores actually did open up during the pandemic in 2020 alone, which tells us something about finding opportunity even through difficult times. I want to draw a golden thread here between the three of you. As Danielle mentioned, coming from a place of rebellion, being very self-controlled and quite assertive in her role, and not necessarily wanting to just be the boss, but really have an influence in changing the narrative around certain environments. Vera also saying that she wanted to change the narrative around how climate change and green energy was being communicated on the African continent. And yourself telling us, Theo, that you really had a passion for sneakers, but also wanted to ensure that we're actively creating a brand and a culture that is authentic to us as Africans. I want us to tie this to leadership, how the role of one's leadership style plays an influence not only on the vision of the entity, but in how sustainable it is. And I'm hearing very different personalities from all three of you, but there does appear to be a common link and a common thread as to how each of you, using your independent leadership styles, have influenced, shaped the growth and sustainability of your businesses by, I guess, sticking to a few key principles. Theo, I'd like to start with you maybe, if you can just give us some of your views on not only your leadership style, but how that's played a role in influence on the teams you've been able to build. Then, Danielle, I'd like to come to you to get your thoughts, given the contrast that we see between the two of you here. Theo?
Thank you, Gugu. So for me, I had to quit my job, come back home, start from humble beginnings in a room in Alexandra. And it started off as a side hustle. The one day we've got 10 orders, I'm picking them myself. The next day I've got 40 orders. I'm pulling a guy on the street to come help me pack these orders. The next day it's 80 orders. I'm pulling 2 more guys to come in, without proper recruitment processes or even human capital. The next day, we've got about 150 orders, and I'm pulling 2 more guys. These people are working for me without even contracts or any sort of policies in the business, But as the business grew, the accountant in me kicked in and said, Theo, this is not the way you're going to run the business.
Yep.
Number one, you need to make sure that you corporatize this business and you can be able to corporatize and allow it to scale, and you can move on into other avenues of business and growing the brand. And from then, I had to make sure that our back office, is well corporatized, there's processes, there's systems, and build an infrastructure that is going to allow, our business to scale. But because of the people that worked for us at the time were so driven by the passion, the vision, the brand promise, I had to make them understand that that is not enough to really scale a business and to build a business that we have. We need to be able to corporatize and allow ourselves to scale and make sure that we sustain the business. Therefore, what then happened was that I had to get the right skill set into the business that is going to be able to contribute and add value to the vision and allow us to scale. So we have different types of skill set in the business. People that are very qualified in their positions, well qualified in their positions, have experience from corporates, and therefore we've got people that are also on the ground. So I had to really lead the two, because in our business we always say that we humanizing human capital.
Yes.
And oftentimes entrepreneurs have a mistake of thinking that HR is a matter of, here's a contract of employment, here's the terms that you're agreeing to, here's your salary, this is your leave days, and that's where HR ends up. And that's the mistake that you can ever make, because at the end of the day, you're employing people, and people are human beings and creatures of emotion. So therefore, you need to be able to humanize the process and be able to lead people in the right way. And I think that's one thing that I've sort of embodied into my leadership style and management style, to say, yes, we might have started in the township in 10 Avenue in Alexandra, but we are not just a gassy business. We are going to build and corporatize this business and allow it to scale. Because oftentimes, also Renelle spoke about, the people that we grew up, looking up to, in the townships, and phenomenal businesses that were being built.
Sure.
But one thing that I ensured that is, so much as we started in Alexandra, we're going to corporatize this business and allow it to scale. So that has always been from day one, my sort of leadership style and my management style, to take people with me in this journey. Because sometimes as leaders, the vision is in your head, and you expect everyone to see the way you see it. You expect people to feel your emotions, to understand the mission. So one thing that I did is that, gents, look, yes, we're building this thing, but we're not ending here. This is not a hand-to-mouth business. We're going to scale this. We're going to have human capital processes. We're going to build a B2B, our business unit. We're going to be able to collaborate with great businesses and get out of the township and really scale this business and put it throughout the country, or all over the country.
Definitely.
And for me, that has always been my leadership style, to be inclusive in my approach. Let me put it like that.
Dineo, I really want to get your feedback here as well. I heard you agreeing in the background. Share more insight with us regarding your experience, regarding your leadership style.
I think being very inclusive within your team and being very inclusive within, how you lead. I'm a lead from within and lead from the back sort of leader. I hardly ever lead from the front. I don't apply micromanagement in my leadership skills within my teams. And I look at, particularly, once again, I'll go to the television production. I won't focus on cosmetics for now, because that's our baby business. And I love hearing Theo saying that, when he started out, he got 10 orders, he was packing them himself. And as the orders grew, because with the cosmetics, I'm at that stage now where I'm packing orders myself and I'm doing deliveries myself. And I think sometimes you feel that just because one of your businesses is established and is quite sustainable and it's a well-oiled machine, more like a sausage factory, you tend to forget that when you start another one, you're starting it literally like a newborn baby. It's still going to go through its teething phases, its crawling phases, its falling phases, and its identity phases. So within leadership, I truly believe in instilling the values and principles of mind, spirit, and culture. And by culture, I don't talk about how my team and I were raised and our personal backgrounds and so forth. I talk about our team culture, our corporate culture, our business culture, and also understanding the culture of the clients that we serve, and what their corporate cultures are, and what they stand for, and what their value systems are. I always like to make sure that we understand the mind of the business, and this is the vision of the business. Where do we want to see the business go? And I always say, get into the minds of your people. As much as you may have your own personal visions for the business, you are working with people that are thinkers, that are innovators, that are creative in their own right, that really have a lot to say. So as much as I'm a talkative person, and talking is really what I do in my day-to-day, But when it comes to my leadership, I like to listen more. I really like to hear what my team players have to say. I like to be guided by them. I actually love to be led myself, and I like to submit to their call to actions internally as to, the ideas that we have and so forth. And when it comes to the spirit of the business, I always want it to be in sync when we speak about the tenacity of the business and the resilience of the business. And that also comes to self and person. I always want to make sure that we are resilient within each other and within the team. And we are resilient within our individual capacities. And when I speak of culture, hence I said earlier that, we have to understand what our ethos is.
Yes.
What our value systems are, what it is that we stand for, where we are trying to go. So my leadership style is really within and from the back. I'm a very supportive leader. I like to listen quite a lot. I like to make sure that I'm listening to my executives, because I'm not the sole executive within the production house. I've got a line producer, I've got a production accountant for different shows and so forth. And I think in terms of innovation, it's very, very important. And it became extremely important for me to surround myself with people that are more creative than myself, so that we can start diversifying as a business and what our offerings are and what our offering is. So we started off with reality, and now we've moved into drama. We are starting to stabilize in the drama genre of content. And all we want to do really is just create ideas, develop them, and execute them at the highest optimum level that we can serve our clients.
Definitely.
And that's where I am with leadership. I'm very much almost like a mother hen with my leadership style. I really like to almost like not disappear so much that you don't have access to me, and not disappear so much that you don't feel me around. But I always like to say, give your people a chance to help you take your business to the next level. What is the point of employing people with skill sets, but you're going to be dictating to them what needs to be done with those skill sets? Sometimes step back and just guide and support their skill sets, and give them enough space, room, and confidence for them to show you what your business's potential is.
Oh, for sure. I wish I could show you the comments on the chat service at the moment, but I will share a few. There are fire flames, there are fist bumps, and of course, even congratulatory messages showing that the power of collaboration is quite key, maintaining a higher vision for your business, and of course, humanizing human resources, which was a theme that Theo had touched on. And I'm hearing similar words and similar themes which have proven to be so critical to building a team that will help you build a sustainable business. Dineo spoke about culture, vision, and having the ability to listen. Theo spoke about humanizing your business processes as well, and human resources there. And this tells us something as well about sharing the vision that typically sits in the mind of the entrepreneur and founder of the business, that needs to be shared, communicated, and adopted by the people that you need to trust. And Vera, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this one as well, particularly because you come from a background which is technically intense. There's certain levels of technical requirements and technical skills that are often needed, but this also does need to speak to the empathy that's required, or I guess the EQ, emotional quotient and emotional intelligence that might be required when it comes to recruitment and building a team. How have you found a balance of the two? Not compromising the technical capabilities of your team, but at the same time having individuals who are so committed to the cause that success is inevitable, particularly from your background and experience. Vera?
Yeah, absolutely. So with my background in engineering, it's always been about machinery, it's about technical, it's about trying to mitigate risks as much as possible. And I remember I used to work at Volkswagen in Uitenhage, and you kind of go there, it's all about robots, and the people are just a commodity. And I think that's one of the things where, and this is just in terms of just how the engineering space is like. And I remember thinking about how when I was starting the business, that we need to be people-centered. And I think that's the biggest thing in terms of my leadership style, is how do we center the people we're serving, our clients, our team, the communities in which we're built, some of these buildings are being built in. How do we serve them? And so in terms of my leadership style, I think it's really just about managing your own pace as a leader. So really like caring for yourself in your mental health, and just making sure that you're constantly surrounded, that you're taking moments to pause and rest, instead of just simply, going for the next thing and going for the next thing and going for the next thing without stopping and pausing and asking, does it align with your long-term vision? And so that's something that I've had to be intentional and conscious about doing. And also just being really focused and prepared. So I can already say that as leaders, and I'm sure I'm not only speaking for myself and this panelists, as leaders, we are awake before our team is awake. We've already planned as much as we possibly can. We've tried to prepare to set them up for success and for them to be able to win in what we have tasked them to do. And so I think, and also just for us, even as green designers, constantly asking them, what is your vision? Where do you see your professional development? How do you want to grow? And then surrounding them as much as we possibly can and getting out of the way. And so I think that that's something that, you know, when we start centering people in our businesses and in our business models, and even in just, you know, how we approach our clients, then I think that that's when you start to see a lot of the success. Some of the greatest ideas are not going to come from the founder of the business.
True.
You know, they're not going to come from the director of the business. Some of the greatest ideas are going to come from everyone. And it's really going down, like, you know, making sure that we listen to as many people as possible. And at the same time, it's you know, that tension between the now. So you have to get, you know, salaries paid now. You've got to get projects now. You've got to bring them in now. Deadlines need to come in now. But also managing that tension of now and the future. Yeah. Because I think all of us, we want our business to outlive us. And we want the vision of our businesses to just, you know, outlast us and to grow bigger than we can imagine. Yeah. And so it's trying to manage the tension of, you know, working in your business, working on your business, and still trying to make sure that your team gets to walk in their own calling and purpose as well.
For sure. On that note, Vera, this is where I want us to get very practical about it and perhaps reflecting on some failures, right? We're well aware that if we take a look at the recent stats, facts, and figures from the Department of Small Business Enterprises in South Africa, it's well documented that between 70 to 80% of businesses actually fail within their first year of operations. Very few even make it beyond that to 5 years, and even further beyond that to 7 or 10 years plus. And this tells us something, that as each of you are here as successful entrepreneurs, having built your businesses sustainably, that there are a few peers, colleagues who perhaps have fallen by the wayside, and maybe you at one point actually nearly experienced failure. I'm keen for you to take us into your confidence, and perhaps each of you can share stories here of failure, as that is one particular concept that we need to understand, not only in life, that it does happen and not to take it personally, but number two, how best to navigate it, and of course making sure that there's a sense of resolve and resilience to actually step aside from the failure and keep going, either onto the next project or trying to resuscitate perhaps your business under a new strategy or format. Vera, I guess, what was the night that perhaps gave you sleepless nights, where the business nearly failed, where salaries weren't paid, like Dineo mentioned, and where you had to find new ways of building a new lease on life and greater sense of sustainability to your business?
Yeah, I think there are very few entrepreneurs who can say they've never experienced failure in some form or another. And I would say that failure had happened for me. I think most of the businesses fail when either the revenue model just wasn't there, which is something that my business nearly had in year one already, because there was no clear revenue model. I knew what the passion was, but I didn't know how to make money out of that passion. And so already in year one, there's already that kind of that challenge of trying to make sure that works. And I think another thing that nearly got my business to fail is pace. I was trying to rush my business. I was trying to already grow it exponentially. I was already, like, I remember the one time, and I'll share this one in confidence. So the one time we started a green design in Cote d'Ivoire. So I was convinced that we're going to enter into Francophone Africa. This was about 3 years ago. Convinced we're going to enter into Francophone Africa, got a business partner going, had all of that ready. I had no legal contracts, had no accounting processes, had none of that all sorted out. And so obviously that did not work. Definitely did not work. But I still am convinced that we will enter Francophone Africa. I just think that the time wasn't right. And the strategy wasn't right. And so I think that I think it's just managing pace as much as you possibly can, and then really strategizing, especially when you're adding additional service offerings. And then I think that as an engineering consulting firm, because what we do is people buy our time in terms of advice, it's constantly asking, what problem are we trying to solve? And are people willing to pay for me to solve that problem? A lot of entrepreneurs come up with problems that they think that, people want to pay for them to solve. And then they wonder why, years later, they're still trying to get that business. So really listening to the market especially in terms of climate change, what are the problems that some of our clients are trying to solve, and then positioning ourselves for that, as well as being thought leaders in that space. But yeah, I think a lot of it really comes down to just having not planned, and definitely just not planned my pace.
Yeah. Valid point there. And on pace, Theo, I want to come to you here because some might look at Batu and think, goodness, how this business has grown at such a fast pace, given the limitations on time and such a difficult time as well, given that we've been in a pandemic, subsequent lockdowns, supply chain disruptions, the list goes on. How have you managed pace in terms of building a sustainable business, and maybe also help us reflect on some of the potential failures that you might have experienced in the past too?
I think for us, one of the biggest challenges and how we've managed to really manage pace was that if you look at the way we started our business, is that we did not have a blueprint. We were trying, even when we did our business modeling and everything else, we did not look at any other business and try to replicate it. We had a vision, of building this shoe brand that Africans can proudly affiliate with. And even in terms of how we're going to build the end-to-end value chain and how we're going to build our own stores, we did not have any business to look into and say, okay, we're going to replicate this. And we gained, I think, traction and a great appetite very quickly in the business. So between managing, building the brand promise and corporatizing something that you don't even have a blueprint for, that was the biggest challenge, because we made so many other mistakes, in doing so. People often come to our offices and go like, oh, this is a well-oiled machine. But tell you what, before that, we made so many mistakes before, we got to this point, what looks like a well-oiled machine. Yeah. So that was the biggest challenges that we've ever done. But one thing that I think I have really helped us in the business, and it's a philosophy that I've got as an entrepreneur, I call it the Pcr Strategy. Oftentimes when you are in rhythm and you're building a brand and you want to build a brand that is going to outlive you, a business that is going to outlive you, and a business of impact, it's very important to go with the Pcr strategy. It's my own term, it's my own strategy. Uh-huh. You pause, you consolidate, you repurpose. That's very, very important, because it's very, very easy to get onto the rhythm of things and just keep on executing and keep on implementing and keep on doing great. But it's very important equally. So it's equally important to pause a bit, consolidate your methodologies, consolidate your returns, consolidate your resources, and repurpose what you're trying to build. Because oftentimes, even though you have one vision or long-term vision, in the next 20 years, 30 years, you're going to repurpose and change it in so many ways. The way you're executing it is going to change. So that is one thing that has really managed or helped me manage, pace. I always pause, reflect a bit, consolidate. Okay, cool. This is our returns. This is our resources. Do we still need this asset in the business? Do we still need to pay this expense in the business? Do we still need to adopt this resource in the business? You know what I'm saying? Maybe not. Let's repurpose that again and try to find ways whereby we're going to minimize cost and continue contributing to the bottom line. That is one thing that even today keeps me on, helps me managing the pace of growth. Because when you start a business and your foundation is not great, or it's not solid, when you go through a growth curve, you're going to experience a whole lot of issues. And I will say that again, when you start a business, a foundation of anything, it could be a project, it could be a new business, it could be a startup. If your foundation is not solid, when you are going through a growth curve, you're going to experience so many problems. So it's very important that in the midst of growth, in the midst of high-paced environment, you get a chance to really pause, consolidate, and repurpose everything else. So that is one thing that has really helped me in my business to manage pace and also manage trade as well.
Yeah, very important that you mentioned that. And I do see some feedback in the chat saying, wow, PCR does work. Tsepa also saying the importance of learning from mistakes is a hard lesson to learn, but PCR honestly has done wonders on how we deal with these challenges. As you say, pause, consolidate, resuscitate. Vere, we also see a comment here from Nomkle saying the importance of strategy and modeling. And that ties back to your experience in terms of going into a market without the necessary preparation and then coming back and saying, hold on, perhaps we need to go back to the drawing Leaderboard, which speaks to the foundation that Theo's just alluded to. Dineo, we're excited to hear more from you here because I'm already intrigued. We got an earlier question asking, what business is Dineo in? And I was tempted to respond that, what business is Dineo not in? Because as you highlighted, there's a television production part to it, there's a family business in restauranting, there's the cosmetics business that you're in at the moment. And there's a very wonderful example that you also shared with us about managing pace of your business and managing failures, that the television production business has managed to grow, has gone through its cycles, and is now at a phase of sustainability, versus your cosmetics business, which is still formulating its foundation in order to build that great sense of sustainability. It almost seems as though there's an interesting paradox here between these two companies or two sectors that you operate in. And I'm keen for you to share some of the learnings where you've gained some of the successes by going through the tumble dryer and school of hard knocks life lessons with one particular sector and one particular business. And yet you're back now on the ground floor, plowing and putting in the work into a new business and new business operation. Are you finding that the experience between the two is different at all? And are there particular lessons that you can share with us as to how both these experiences do still speak to sustainability despite them needing a different approach?
Thank you very much for making it clear to everyone what businesses I'm in. I'm a television producer. I run Brains at Work Media. It's known for its reality shows. We've just diversified our content offering in terms of our catalog. We've just entered the genres of drama series, and we are pitching for more drama series. We're pitching for film as it stands, as well as telenovelas. So that's where I am as an entrepreneur in the creative sector. And the cosmetics company, formerly known as Love DR, on its own as a clothing line, has been rebirthed as Love DR Beauty. I am the founder and the director of Love DR Beauty. It's at inception phases right now. And I think businesses are almost like pregnancies. No one pregnancy is the same, right? No one experience of raising two different children will ever be the same. Your children are different from each other. Mm-hmm. So the production company is definitely different from the cosmetics company. And really, I like PCR. I really, really love it. I've lived by it, and I've worked on that offering of it for the longest time, purely because business doesn't really fail unless you close its doors, unless you put all tools down and you walk away from it and you say, we are not coming back to this. This is a closed chapter. But for as long as you are still keeping those doors open, you need to pause, right? You need to consolidate, and you need to repurpose. More than just before you even get to resuscitating. Because if we look at Love DR, I closed the doors on clothing completely, because the foundation, exactly what you're saying, when you hit a growth curve, it's going to be messy. It became messy, and the mess was too big for me to be able to even resuscitate. I could not even resuscitate. There was nothing to consolidate. There was nothing we just had to close ship. So was that in essence failure? Then when you close the door, then we can say, we have stopped this lorry, we have failed at it, we're focusing on something else. But I really want to condition people's mindsets and how they think of failure in the processes of starting a business. Definitely. When you are learning lessons, you are truly not failing. You are in your educational phase of being an entrepreneur. You understand? You really are learning truthful things about what it takes to build a business. So you are not failing, you are learning. Failure for me, and that's just me personally, is when tools have been put down, people have been let go, doors are shut, and we're saying, no more. I don't know where else to go. I'm done. Then you truly have failed at pausing. You have truly failed at consolidating. You've truly failed at repurposing and resuscitating what could have possibly been a success if only you looked at it differently. If only you seek the counsel of maybe a mentor or a soundboard or somebody who's going to come and think through your problems and help you map out solutions healthily. I'm a pauser. Yeah. I don't believe in quitting. I believe in resting. I think rest, pause, along with your team. It will not kill you to just stop your lorry just a little bit and take a good look, holistically, a 360 view at what you guys are doing and how you are moving as a team. Very, very important, because you could be moving seemingly okay as a team, but because you're so focused on the next and the next client and the next project and the next paycheck and the next this, the next that, you're really missing the fact that some of your team players are limping, right? And they just need to be zoomed in on,
Yeah.
and some of them maybe have broken wings. They need to be zoomed in on, they need to be put on the bench a little bit, they need to be taken care of, and then they need to be brought back to be strong again. So I do believe really in the sustainability of business and in the lessons of business to say, truly, take a break, pause, think.
And Danielle, I want to
And
jump
not
in there
only
because
of the vision, yes,
it
ma'am.
appears as though that theme regarding pausing does not necessarily reflect a lack of ambition, because that's the mindset that a lot of people have, that pausing, resting, taking too much time out then reflects perhaps a lack of ambition. Help us understand that particular concept and maybe how we need to fight that thinking too.
You have to think of your business under the analogy of running a marathon versus running a race.
Yep.
Right? Both my peers here have spoken of pace. When you're running a marathon, you pace yourself. So you give yourself a solid head start, right? And then you begin to pace yourself. I used to run very long distances at school, and that's where I really truly started seeing business and taking lessons from, and just observing how sports people, you can learn so much from just observing sports stars.
Yes.
And how they apply discipline and how they apply rest and how they apply all these principles that we're speaking about. That's how they win. And you have to learn that you can't just run without rest. You can't just train without consolidation. You can't do all of those things without looking at everything holistically and pausing the body and getting into various muscles on the body, and then actually just making sure that all these muscles and ligaments on your body are okay to actually continue with the race. And even when you're watching people run a marathon, they rest at certain points, and they rest not by completely halting themselves from running, but they just slow down a little bit, but they keep going. It's just smaller steps, slower steps, but they keep going. So we have entrepreneurs that really put themselves under pressure to be at a Vera level with immediate effect, to be at a Theo level with immediate effect. Oogklappies are very important in horse racing. I like analogies, pardon me. When you remove the oogklappies from a horse in a race, horses won't run straight. They're going to run into each other. So it's very important that you have to have literally tunnel vision focus. So you and your team can focus on what your goals are and keep on at it in that path, because the more you focus on what your competitors are doing, you're going to run at a pace that is not for you, but at a pace that is for your competitors. And their strategies are different from yours. So if there's a production house that's doing literally 17 productions and we're only on 4, we should be okay with the 4 and produce at the pace of the 4 and still have that tunnel vision to get to the 17, so we can honor executing well within our strategies that serve us. And PCR, trust me, take that with you anywhere in your life, anywhere in your businesses. Pause. There's nothing wrong with pausing, and that's the most important component of it.
Sure. Rest
the strategy, rest the team players, rest the manner in which you're moving. Come back, rethink, re-strategize.
Sure.
I love the repurposing of ideas, the repurposing of all strategies, and maybe the timing of that strategy was not correct then. If you repurpose it and you bring it in now, you might find that actually you paused a really great thing. It's now time to implement on it.
Makes sense.
So that's pretty much my thinking around it.
Very important. I guess if we had a live audience right now, there would be applause all round, given the comments that have been shared by each of you. And of course, the nuggets in terms of embracing failure, which again emphasizes some of the feedback that we heard from one of our speakers yesterday, that failure happens. Don't take it personally. That's just the attitude that we need to adopt. And of course, the analogy, as you say, to keeping focused, having tunnel vision focus. Nomke says we love the analogies, so it makes note-taking a lot easier. So keep it coming, Dineo. Keep them coming. Another one says, Smanga here says, before putting your tools down, consider the PCR strategy. Again, the importance of rest and, of course, focus. And, of course, coming back to that comparison to sports stars, that even if they face potential injuries, even if they don't win all their games, even when running a marathon, they train continuously, they remain consistent, but they take their breaks and their rests where need be. I'm quite excited because we've really filled up with so much insight, and entrepreneurs that are online at the moment on the chat service also sharing their feedback and highlighting potential themes and I guess suggestions that they're looking to implement within their businesses. And a reminder to you as entrepreneurs who might be joining us that we're happy to take your questions and we'll be sharing them and directing them specifically to some of the speakers. So jot down who you'd like your question to be addressed to, and be sure to keep it quick, sharp, short and concise to ensure that we have as much time as possible for those questions to follow through in the Q&A segment. There's something important that I do want us to focus on before coming back to some of the broader themes and the questions that our colleagues on the platform do want to ask us. And this takes me to you for a moment, which of course speaks to pace, speaks to success and building sustainable businesses. Yesterday, one of our speakers had mentioned in a presentation that it's important to remain humble. And I guess in the world and the life that we live in, filled with social media, expectations for individuals to be successes overnight. And sometimes the successes and the accolades do come, but it is important to remain humble because ultimately life does happen. How do you balance that as an entrepreneur in terms of a great sense of humility, being open to learn, accepting your failures, but still showing up like the rock star that you are when you've concluded all the powerful deals that you've signed off on? Is there a lesson here to tie in terms of sustainability and, of course, learnings to grow and cultivate, a character of resilience within your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, all of us in this panel have spoken about being people-centric. And I think that the only way you can be people-centric and to really listen to every single person, irrespective of, socioeconomic status or class or fame or any of that, is really to be humble. I don't think that any business can be built off pride. I don't think that any sustainable business can be built off pride. And I don't believe that team will stay if a leader is unable to actually, like at the end of the day, when you're a leader and when you're an entrepreneur and a founder of a business, you're actually there to serve. And so I think that humility is such a core component in order for businesses to be able to go forward. And even if I think about some of the roles that we're playing now, even with green design, we're busy leading some of the green building councils now across the continent in 10 African countries. And I can tell you now that, going into Cameroon, Kenya, Rwanda, like you don't just go in there and, enforce what you believe or what you've experienced in other people. That's not how to that's not how to solve the problem that we're trying to solve. It comes down to humility. It comes down to knowing that you're not always the smartest in the room. And most of the time, you're probably not even the smartest in the room at all. And so I think it really comes down to, if you have a conviction about the problem that you're trying to solve, then you will surround yourself with people who will be able to constantly realign you back towards that vision. So for me, I this business would not be where it is now. It's built off the back of, first of all, a generation that fought for me as a Black woman to even have a business in South Africa. And then it's also built off, a lot of team, a lot of sacrifices of other people. And that keeps me humble.
Yep, certainly. I'm glad that you touch on that because it is, as you say, people-centric, focused on accepting and managing your failures and, the humility that is required in terms of a business ever being built on pride. Theo, I'd like to come to you here. There's a question that's come up. And it does speak to talent retention and, of course, attracting the right talent. The question says, I'd like to ask Theo how he goes about getting the right people in his business, as well as keeping the right talent and growing people in his organization. As we know, businesses are really fundamentally made by people. And maybe you can help us understand this from a Batu point of view, as we're well aware that the brand is young, fresh, dynamic, and individuals within the institution themselves might want to pursue their own goals and visions, as Dineo had emphasized earlier as well. But how do you manage attracting the right talent, retaining the right talent, but also grooming individuals to attain their own levels of personal success?
Yeah, I think that is the most difficult thing, managing people, retaining people, aligning with the people in the organization as it grows. That is the most, I think, difficult thing that a lot of organizations that are going through, I think, growth stage, they struggle with. So it's not only about getting the right people in the business or getting the right people in the past, but it's about also getting the right people in the past and making sure that they're sitting in the right seat. And I think that is the ultimate goal of retaining people in the business, making sure that they are sitting in the right seat and they understand what that seat means or the seat that they occupy means to the vision and the mission of the business. So what we try to do, like I said earlier on, we have a very inclusive approach in our leadership and engaging people and making sure that we align with the growth of our people within the business and their personal goals as well. So we have a human capital department that really engages with all the different business units in the business and really tries to engage on either one-on-one level,
sure.
Or holistically as a business unit as well, and try to engage and to really understand what people are going through, post the working environment, and what are their visions, what is the vision or their personal vision, and where do they see themselves in the business. Really engage with people in that sense, and we also allow people to sort of express their opinions and be comfortable and work in an environment whereby they know that they are most welcome to add value or to share opinions or to come up with solutions for the business, and also really allow people to be able to be flexible within organization, because oftentimes when you're building a business and corporatizing it, people feel like, okay, cool, this is not my issue in the business. This is something to do with marketing. So therefore I would look past it. This has nothing to do with me. It's e-commerce. So we have meetings. Our mission says, we want to reignite hope and create sustainable jobs. So on a weekly basis, we have something called the Reignite Hope meetings, where we get together, with everyone, 300 of us every Monday. 300 of us, and we engage. And because of some of the people in other regions of the country, we need to make sure that we engage and we're inclusive. So if there's a new campaign that is going out or there's a new product that is going out, the guys in Kimberley, the guys in Venda, they should not be surprised when they see it on social media or see it on TV or whatever the case might be. So every Monday we're like, hey guys, we just partnered with this brand. These are the mechanics of the collaboration, and this is what we're trying to do. We're going to release this new product, so please be aware that this is what the business is working on. So that someone as far as who's in Mthatha, working for Batu, feels a part of this organization, feels like, I knew about it before everyone else, as opposed to just going on social media and say, how I work for this business, but I didn't know that we're collaborating with this brand. So we are very inclusive, and even some of the solutions and projects that we're working with, say, hey guys, marketing or e-commerce is working on this project, and then this is what we want to go about, and we allow people to really give their feedback on it before we even go live with it. So that's how
inclusivity is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah, 100%.
Inclusivity. 100%. Thanks for that, Theo. I'm aware that we've got about 4 more minutes, and there are 2 questions that I'd like to squeeze in. Dineo, there's one from the audience member that extended to you, and it asks, how do you handle family dynamics, considering parents and siblings being involved in your productions? How do you manage poor performance, laziness, or a lack of camaraderie? I think that's a tough question, but I definitely speaks to the generation of family-owned businesses that comes about. Your response, Dineo?
Handling those family dynamics has become the easiest thing for me, and I don't even lose sleep at night, purely because when we put people in places to execute on their skill sets, right, it relieves others from having to carry over those tasks. So I'm not responsible for HR issues in the business. The role that I play, I completely, particularly with the entity that involves my family, I'm completely removed from it, and I wear a hat of being at their level as well. Because I'm not so much the producer, I then become the cost member as well. So we all relay all of our conflicts to our line producer, to our series producer, and we negotiate all of our contracts through our series producer and our lines producer. I don't get involved. It's really not my responsibility. It's not a matter of washing your hands clean and saying, not my monkey, not my zoos, I'm not playing on this field. No, really, it's just truly honoring the role in which you play for the contract in which for the entity that we're trying to all operate in. So when it comes to family dynamics with the Ranakas, from a professional standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, everybody is made well aware who their lines of comms is, and that is always our line producer, and that is always our series producer. Nobody ever comes to the executive producer. But in terms of the other productions, I always believe in being accessible as a business owner and accessible as a leader. I believe in, because we work with a lot of freelancers and just a few of permanent employees. And along with the freelancers that we work with, I believe in being accessible, completely accessible, so that when they have issues that they really can't discuss with anyone else, they can drop me a text, they can drop me an email, and I'll always avail myself. But when there's family issues, there's serious, serious boundaries, because that can be murky waters, and you really want a healthy referee in that regard.
Yep.
And I'm not the one.
Very good in terms of compartmentalizing and setting boundaries that are quite important. Very last question that I'd like to address to you, and I guess this helps us conclude the conversation, as we're very well aware that building a sustainable business ultimately speaks to being human-centric. The finance, the strategy, the marketing, the positioning, the brand power, the exposure, the scalability of the business, all of those things still go back down to human resources, humanizing human resources, as we've heard, and of course understanding that it's the character of the individuals who embody the spirit, the passion, and the vision of the entity who will be able to bring about some of those insights and opportunities. And I guess as we close off with you, also reflecting on your experience, reflecting on where we are engaging on today, a platform which is really focused on Business Connect, Eskom's business investment competition, really trying to stimulate opportunities for entrepreneurs to participate. How, in your experience, Vere, opportunities like this, where corporates are able to facilitate growth and inspire and encourage and assist entrepreneurs with their growth ambitions. How critical are these to making sure that more entrepreneurs are able to enter the ecosystem in South Africa? And perhaps if you've participated in similar programs, how they've really assisted your business in rejigging your model to attain more sustainable growth in your organization.
So yes, definitely being part of an ED program makes a big difference. As Green Design, we've been part of ED programs before. And I remember in 2018, what a lot of people might not know is that there was actually another director in the business at the time. The Green Design was initially called something else. And then he resigned from the business in that year. And in that year, I couldn't even get myself to carry on because I was just like, how do I run this business? He was overseeing all of the business model, the revenue model, the commercial side, financial side. And here I was, an engineer, passionate about what I do, but the director who was overseeing commercial had just resigned. And I couldn't even get up, and I couldn't even, I was ready to quit the business in 2018.
Sure.
And I remember being part of a program that the person would call me every single day and say, get up, you have a purpose, you have a vision, we're supporting you, we're backing you, the country needs you to continue doing what you're doing. And I'm sure, there are many other people who could do what I'm doing, but it's having that encouragement. It's really about understanding that it takes a village to build a business. And so I think that programs like these and what Eskom is doing for the businesses here, I would encourage the businesses to take it all up. I would encourage them, you only get out what you really what you put in. So take it all out, get to meet people, network as much as you possibly can, take all the notes that you can, contact some of the panelists if you need to. But I think that you can only grow as far as your network is. And as far as the opportunities that come to you. And I know that what separates us most of the time is not our talent, but it's opportunities. That's what separates us.
Definitely.
So I think programs like these are so important. And, probably speaking on behalf of all of the panelists, we really appreciate being part of this and are cheering all of the businesses on to be able to continue to succeed as much as they possibly can.
Certainly. I think all three of you have really left such a great level of inspiration and practical examples for the entrepreneurs on our platform today to learn from, by being so authentic about your journey and your experiences, by being so forthright about your goals, your ambitions, and how it is that you maneuver and implement your strategies, but also being open to sharing some of these thoughts and suggestions with us and taking it back down to basics, building the foundation of the business before you reach a growth curve, understanding that you need to pause. Of course, make sure that you do consolidate and repurpose your strategy where need be, humanizing your entity and ensuring that individuals that you work and collaborate with understand the vision that is in your mind. These are just a few of the highlights that we've shared with you today. And of course, rethinking failure. Failure is an opportunity for you to learn. Until you shut down the doors of your business, you have not failed. And I think these are just some of the insights and, of course, the knowledge that we'll continue to share and messaging that will spread as the feedback from our chat service is really showing flames, showing fist bumps. And thanks you for your contribution to the conversation today. Sandis was saying great lessons from all of you guys. Thank you for sharing your lessons on how to grow your businesses. And another one saying today's teachings are mind-blowing with a bomb. And another one also saying that we've certainly learned a lot about inclusivity indeed. So on that note, I want to take the time out to thank each of you for joining us today. That's Theo Baloyi, who's the founder and CEO of Batu Shoes, Dineo Ranaka, who's a media personality and businesswoman with multiple business interests, and Vera Shaba, who's the founder and CEO of Green Design Africa. We appreciate your time, we appreciate your effort, and we appreciate the jobs you're creating, the economic contribution you're making to the country, and of course the passion that you're sharing within your respective spaces. So we wish you nothing but the best and of course continued success going forward to all three of you. Thank you so much. Dineo, Theo, and Vera, we wish you a wonderful day further.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Well, to you as our entrepreneurs who are still with us on the platform, I would ordinarily say, are you not entertained? But beyond being entertained, I think, are you not informed, enlightened, and of course encouraged to make sure that you are able to expand on your strategies for your businesses, given the information that's been shared with you today? Well, it's been quite fun, fact, and packed morning that we've had so far. And of course, we want you to continue sharing your feedback with us in the chat and of course through the Q&A service. For the moment though, we're going to take a quick, brief 10-minute break. That's just for you to stretch your legs, get some refreshments, perhaps absorb some of the information that we've shared with you this morning, and of course, prepare for our next session. But before you do that, we do want to encourage you to make your way to the exhibition hall. A few of you have been networking and sharing your personal information within the chat. Please kindly refrain from doing so, as we would like to comply with protecting your personal information in line with the POPI Act. Rather, go to the exhibition center, go to the networking room, and network and interact directly with some peers, and you'll be able to be clear as to who you're sharing your contact details with. Fill up the question forms and, of course, participate in earning more points. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We'll see you in just a few. Welcome back. We hope that you've stretched out your legs, gotten some refreshments, and maybe even made your way to the restroom, right? But that's because we also wanted you to visit our exhibition center and exhibition room on our platform, which affords you the opportunity to interact with the various companies that are present on our platform today. Get to understand who you can network with, partner with, and of course, engage with in terms of growing your business. While I think it's quite safe to say that we are shooting the lights out with our content and presentations today, and we look to build on some of these themes going forward. So as you filled up your notebooks, absorbing the information, one thing that you need to be mindful of is to understand how to internalize this and make it practical for your organization. So as you continue to engage in our conversations and prepare yourself for our next panel discussion, I do want to remind you that many of the themes that have been shared here for you today are really meant for you to consider how best to implement them within your organization. Well, as mentioned, many of you have been able to fill out the points and participate on the platform by responding to several questions and sharing some of your themes through our gamification. And if we haven't incentivized you enough, just a reminder that we have 4 Take-A-Lot vouchers worth 500 Rand. Yep. That's quite a sizable amount during this particular time, and these are up for grabs, and we will be announcing the winners later on today. But I do want to give you a quick refresher of who is leading on the leaderboard, and it seems as though Nature Cause are still at number 1 with 65 points, a change in number 2 with Nkosikhona Phakathi coming in at 65 points as well, and Maurice, she was at the first position, or position number 1 yesterday, also tied in at 65 points. Kidebogile, or Kidiboni rather, Sekhole, as well as Albert Lubisi also featuring there on the top 5 list. But if you want to give Nature, Nkosikhona, Maurice and Kidiboni a run for their money, make sure that you continue earning your points by answering the various questions that we have available on the platform today. Well, coming back to the conversations that we'd like to engage on, and of course, this is also an opportunity for you to continue sharing your thoughts and feedback with us. We're building up on the conversations and themes that we've set on. Yesterday was all about the skill set that's required, focused on branding, using and leveraging technology, understanding how best to use your finances to get you into a position of stability where you're able to access new financial opportunities, and of course, building a team around you. A moment ago, we did speak to a panel of experts regarding building a sustainable business. And as mentioned, it starts with people. But one of the key financial resources, or resources that proves to be critical to the growth of any organization, is finance. Unlocking capital that can be used to propel and mobilize the expansion of your business. So this is our next panel discussion that we're going to head into this morning, and we will be taking a look at some key themes that we can discuss, primarily reflecting on, again, the various forms of financial assistance that an SMME can actually access, but most importantly, also understanding some of the common mistakes that small and medium enterprises face when trying to access these opportunities of finance. Today, we're joined by a panel of 4 experts who will be giving us some insight into their organizations, both players in the private and public sector, and of course an economist to help us understand the bigger picture that applies to SMMEs in terms of seeking growth and financial opportunities to grow. So I'd like to welcome our guests who are joining us virtually, and you are more than welcome to applaud them and welcome through the chat. And of course, get your questions ready to address to them within the Q&A service. But to help me unpack this conversation, we're joined by Don Mashele, who's the head of business development, impact support at Small Enterprise Finance Agency, known as SEFA. Now, they provide development finance to SMMEs and cooperatives that are not able to attract commercial credit. Also joining us, we have Ndumiso Hadebe. He's an economist and CEO of KH Research Equity Partners, which is a research, impact investment, and advisory firm that works with development partners to deliver social and commercial returns. Inaf Matli is also from the Small Enterprise Development Agency known as SEDA, whose vision it is to be the center of excellence for small enterprise development in our country. And we're also joined by Cyrus Rastomji from Dream Team Capital, and their vision is to stimulate entrepreneurship in South Africa amongst individuals from all walks of life. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on screen today. We really appreciate your time and the feedback that you're going to share with us. And I must say, I get quite excited when we talk about money. And I think a lot of our entrepreneurs can relate because it's well known that it's a critical resource to actually ensure that entrepreneurs are able to expand and grow when it comes to the opportunities that are present to them. But before we get into the money side and unpacking the various roles that your institutions do serve, I do think that it's important for us to fully comprehend the lay of the landscape when it comes to entrepreneurship, particularly when it comes to the macroeconomic experience and environment in South Africa. And Ndumiso, I'd like to come to you first for the first question, which will really help us set a theme and an understanding of not only the important role that SMMEs play in an economy where they've often been highlighted and dubbed as the panacea to our challenges regarding unemployment and inequality. But if you can also help us understand what the current lay of the landscape is regarding the performance and culture and environment of SMMEs in South Africa, especially in light of the last 2 years with the pandemic. Ndumiso?
Good morning, Gugu, and good morning to the audience here this morning, and thank you so much for having us here. So the entrepreneurial landscape in South Africa generally, given the macroeconomic environment, as a result of the pandemic in particular, has been somewhat of a mixed bag. And this is particularly because, Gugu, when we look at what influences the performance of SMMEs in the South African operating environment, we find that the performance of the South African economy influences about 60% of the performance of revenues of companies in the South African context. Now, of course, this also varies according to the various industries that different businesses operate in, and of course, the severity at which the restrictions and, of course, the pandemic more broadly has indeed affected them. One of the things that we're able to learn from this, we've learned insights from one of the World Bank reports that speaks to the changing wealth of nations. When looking at the performance of SMMEs that do exceptionally well between low-income countries and all the way to higher-income countries, when they look at three main variables, Gugu. The first variable being what do countries do with their human capital? The second being what do they do with their financial capital? And thirdly, what do they do with their natural capital? Now, of course, in the South African and African context, we would know that we are a resource-endowed country. But one of the key features of high-income countries in this instance is predominantly what they do with their human capital. Now, this speaks directly to the question of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in the South African context. What are we doing to be able to support them? What ecosystem are we creating to be able to create an environment where they can try, fail, try and succeed again. And of course, creating the kind of models that will enable that kind of growth, particularly in areas and sectors that are high growth and high employment multipliers as well.
Yeah. Important that you mentioned that, and I love that you're tying it back into having small businesses try, fail, and try and succeed. So almost accepting failure as a badge of honor and opportunity to learn, as we heard in the previous session. But on that note, Ndumi, so many might continue to ask, why are we still struggling? Why can't we just fix this? We're well aware of the opportunities that are presented by SMMEs participating to reinvigorate and mobilize South Africa's economy. Where are we falling short to fully extrapolate full value and capacity of the performance of SMMEs in our economy?
Well, there are a number of things or factors that influence the progress that we still need to make in terms of ensuring that we have higher success rates when it comes to SMMEs in South Africa. We've already outlined some of the influencing factors at a macro level. Now, at the level of the firm or the level of the organization, there are issues, of course, that continue need to be supported as it relates to market readiness, finance and investment readiness, and of course, organizational readiness of firms to be able to be geared enough to be able to leverage the opportunities that exist in the markets that they operate in, but also able to receive the kind of financial or non-financial support that will enable their growth and development. But again, when we look at the research, Google, the research suggests that entrepreneurs who have at least 7 years worth of work experience are more likely to succeed in entrepreneurial ventures, which when you look at it, at the face of it, it makes complete sense, particularly because an individual who has at least 7 years worth of working experience is able to leverage their networks, their experiences, and the organizations that they've worked with in their working life to be able to create markets markets and cultivate new markets and demand for themselves. Now, that's a phenomenon that we need to look at that question. What does it mean when it comes from a policy point of view, when we encourage young people to start up businesses, and the research suggests this particular finding? What does that mean in terms of the kind of support that we need to lend to young people in this kind of context? It's a difficult question to answer, but it is indeed a question that we're faced with.
Yeah.
At the level of the individual now, at the level of the entrepreneur, when we look at sitting on credit or investment committees, and we've looked at the financials, which are perhaps a bit hazy, there's an element that is related to behavioral finance that I think investment and credit committees particularly look at, and which is quite important at the level of the individual. This speaks to the characteristics of the entrepreneur. Is this entrepreneur demonstrating the tenacity and the resilience and some level of track record in themselves and in the business for us to be able to be persuaded by their business case in order to make the financing or the transaction happen in this instance? And these are some of the non-tangible skills that entrepreneurs need to have in order to persuade credit and investment committees in the event that they are applying for funding. But it also means that over and above building their business, the entrepreneur also needs to focus quite importantly on building self as well.
I love how you've touched on the macroeconomic dynamics, but also the individual and the person. Again, reinforcing the theme that we've heard about humanizing businesses, because it is based on individuals who are able to build teams who will then have the resilience and the resolve to build sustainable entities, which do require some key characteristics that need to be built up in terms of those individuals. Cyrus, I'd like to come to you here, particularly in your capacity as a member of Dream Team Capital. And as the name suggests, Dream Team, you literally allow individuals to dream, work as a team, and hopefully at some point attain and achieve some of their goals together. Building up on what Ndumiso has highlighted in terms of the lay of the landscape of entrepreneurship, and most importantly, the kind of support that we need to offer both individuals and, of course, organizations in order to grow entrepreneurs. I'm keen to understand what you've witnessed in your day-to-day experience of consulting and working closely with small businesses as to, again, how this continues to emphasize the shortfalls that we have in our society to support these businesses. But what have you witnessed in terms of the kind of additional support that entrepreneurs do require in their day-to-day operations?
Sure. Often what we see is that, an entrepreneur might have an amazing idea. They might have the most ambitious goals and an ideal vision of the outcome or where they want to go, but don't necessarily have the skills or the know-how to drive that vision forward. And that's where DTC comes in, and we help entrepreneurs through that bureaucracy of starting or even expanding or purchasing a business, and what needs to be done, what are the steps, and how to, at the end of the day, attain your goals. A lot of the time, you'll see the end product of success. If we take, for an example, a Olympic swimmer, they don't just jump into the pool, swim to the other end and win that gold medal. There's a lot of preparation, a lot of hard work, a lot of training that goes into that for them to attain that gold medal. And we assist entrepreneurs with the groundwork, with what is needed in order to develop their vision, to develop their business model, and then take it further if they do then need funding and finance to have that vision articulated. We then also in that aspect of the development.
Yeah. Cyrus, that's important, because as we will do in just a moment, we'll speak to the numbers guys who have the power of excess capital in their pockets, which is meant to stimulate the economy, that namely being Don as well as Enough, who will give us some insight there first. But as we've heard, it's not just about the money. It's about a certain drive. It's about the opportunities to actually make sure that entrepreneurs will be very clear and very well aware of the kind of opportunities that they can access should they have a clear strategy to mobilize their businesses businesses going forward. And this often takes us to the argument, Cyrus, that I'm keen to get from you regarding entrepreneurs starting businesses out of desperation or actually seeking to solve a problem. And it seems as though in South Africa there's a common analogy or perhaps common thought process that the former is actually why entrepreneurs tend to start their businesses. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. It's a combination of both. South Africa has some of the highest unemployment rates in the world. So a lot of people are, as you said, desperate for an income, and entrepreneurship is a means to an end for a lot of them. I think when you solve a problem that does persist, that is when a business can do its best, and it has a purpose, it has a drive behind it. And a lot of those businesses are extremely successful. But yes, it's a combination of the two. Entrepreneurs start businesses for different reasons. During the recent pandemic, we've seen a lot of retrenchments and a lot of companies downsizing. And that was the drive for people to start in business, because there were no jobs available and they needed to drive themselves forward and earn a living. So the drive behind it can be many reasons, and there is a problem that you solve within your business. It's always it always is beneficial to your customer, and it's a value proposition.
Yeah. And perhaps the reason why I asked this question, Cyrus, just to stay with you for a little bit longer, is because perhaps this might dictate or play an influence on the kind of support that these entrepreneurs need, right? As we're well aware, there's a variety of sectors that one can enter into. But does that play an influence, the motivating factor, the circumstances of the individual and entrepreneur? Does that play a factor in terms of the kind of support that they might require, financial or otherwise?
Yes. So. Financially, we are able to assist businesses in most sectors, most industries. Where we've had challenges is in the syntax industries, usually, which are gambling related, tobacco related, some alcohol related businesses. Other than those, most businesses, provided that they are sustainable, are feasible, and have a good jockey behind it to drive it forward or drive the team forward, most then can be funded, and some also have non-repayable grants available to them. So there's certain sectors of business that government seeks to stimulate, manufacturing, agro-processing, and some of the other main drivers of our economy. And there are non-repayable grants that are offered through government in stimulate these sectors of business, and entrepreneurs should look at accessing those grants in order to, for one, mitigate the risk in the transaction for a financier, if a portion of that is then non-repayable, and two, for reducing their debt or their exposure in the transaction. If there's a contribution from government, it always helps the business along the way. And then in turn, it also stimulates the economy, and that's what they're vision is as well.
Sure. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we will be deep diving into some of those particular themes, and maybe this is a perfect opportunity to do so. Just before we start, though, I do want to remind many of our entrepreneurs who've joined us on this platform to keep their feedback coming in. I do see that some have already gotten started with a few funding questions and opportunities that might be present at CEDA. We'll get to those in just a moment. But if you do have any pressing questions, would like clarity on certain themes, please do share your questions with us under the Q&A segment of the conversation, and we'll be sure to share some feedback with you as well. But Don, let's come to you. As we've heard Cyrus mention, there's a wonderful initiative where we're well aware that the government of the day has made a concerted area of focus in terms of where entrepreneurs do need to thrive, where we do need to increase opportunities for entrepreneurs to participate within the full value chain or supply chain of certain sectors of our economy. I think first things first, let's provide clarity on CEFA, Don, for many entrepreneurs who might be listening and might just know it as a funding and financing agency, but there's something very unique and different to your strategy in comparison to some of your peers and even your counterpart on the panel here today. Help us deep dive and understand the role, function, and mandate of CEFA and how it might speak to the needs of entrepreneurs who are on the line today.
No, thanks, Gugu, and thanks for the opportunity. And good morning to all the entrepreneurs on the platform. So before I do a deep dive, so to speak, on the programs that we offer, I think it's also crucial, I think Domiso did mention this, Cyrus, to your point, that for entrepreneurs, when it comes to access to funding, to understand the ecosystem, to say that who's out there providing funding. Because from both public and private sector, there are so many lenders. Now, if you don't understand that ecosystem and you don't understand the needs of those lenders, it might create some frustration in the process. So the issue here is entrepreneurs, one thing you need to also understand the face of your business.
Yes.
You know, is the startup business, are you expanding, is there an acquisition? Because by understanding the phase and the type of funding that goes to each phase differs. You know, you've got grants, as Sarah did mention, you've got grants, non-repayable grants. You've got debt funding, which I'll come to now, because that's what we provide as CEFA. And you've got equity funding. So you need to understand that, to say, before I go to a lender, be it private, be it public, you know, where am I, what kind of funding am I looking for? So if you're knocking at the right door, you know, you're more likely to get assistance. Because the other reality, Google, is this: as funders or lenders in the public space and in the private space, we struggle, I must be honest, to achieve our targets when it comes to the target that we set, be it annual targets for approvals and disbursements.
Sure.
So there's so much out there in terms of money available. So the supply side is huge. And I can tell you now that DFIs, banks, etc., you know, that to achieve that target is not easy. But on the other hand,
I must say, Don, I do want to jump in there just to say that should be music to the ears of the entrepreneurs that are listening, because if the supply side and the money is there, that essentially means that they just need to ensure that they are able to comply. So maybe let's touch on that very briefly in terms of the areas where they lack in terms of compliance. And
I think that's where I'm going. Now,
sure,
when
certainly.
you go to the demand side, you know, what is it that they need to do on the demand side? So there's a disjuncture somewhere in terms of that. So this discussion, in my view, it should, as a takeaway to entrepreneurs, understand exactly what is it that you're looking for. So as CEFA, you mentioned that what is it that we do in terms of our mandate and our strategy. CEFA only provides debt funding. We only provide debt funding. We don't provide equity funding to entrepreneurs directly. We don't provide grants. So I think that's the one distinction to understand that is where we play. So us providing debt funding, it's got its own limitations in a way, because when it comes to entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs, sometimes it's not obvious all the time that you start a business and be successful. I think from the discussions we had yesterday, early this morning, you know, sometimes you don't succeed. And then failure doesn't mean that you need to give up.
True.
But now, it just means, therefore, that if your business is such that it can attract debt funding because you cannot give us a solid funding proposal, Because remember now, as a CFO, when you provide debt, when you give somebody a loan, the first thing that you check is you check the repayment ability. Are you able to repay the loan as a debt? If there's questions there when it comes to affordability of this particular loan, then we won't be able to assist you. But now, when you go to an equity funder, because you probably cannot give us projections that are predictable, so to speak, but equity investors or venture capital space, that's what they do. So there, the issue of what is it that you need to do, venture capital lenders, they're more flexible in terms of your projections, in terms of what they require. But one of the things is that you need to give them a solid business case. So CFA will provide debt funding up to a maximum of 50 million rand through a suite of our regional offices. What is it that you need to do to comply? Yes. We may not have time to talk about all the eligibility criteria given the limited time. However, what we have done, if you go on a CFA website, there is a pre-screening portal. Because I'm sure there could be an entrepreneur sitting out there, you're talking debt, equity, grants, can you guys assist me? So if you go on our website now, there is a pre-screening portal. So that pre-screening portal, what it will do is, it will ask you all the basic questions about your business. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, if you are eligible to apply for CFA funding, for instance, you have within 15 million, you have within the sectors that Sarah has mentioned as an example, you are not under the exclusions because we do have the exclusions.
Sure.
So it will then say, CFA has got products that can assist you. Here is a form. Download the form, complete it, submit the form with all required documentation. So the other thing that we do need are the documents because we are a lender. So there's compliance in terms of documentation. The beauty about the portal is that if you are not eligible for whatever reason to apply for the products that we do have at CFA, the portal has got other lenders in the ecosystem. As I emphasize the issue of the ecosystem, it's got other lenders, be it private lenders, be it government lenders, and also private banks. So if you respond in terms of the characteristics of your particular business, if CFA can assist you, it won't leave you frustrated. They'll say, here are the other potential lenders that can assist. So when you use that portal, it's got all the questions that you need in terms of compliance, in terms of what is it that you need to do to be eligible.
Don, if I may, I'd like to jump in there because I do realize that there's quite a lot that we're going to delve into and we want to make sure that we get as much information as possible. But I do see that there is some feedback from one of our participants on the chat service Herbert Nenweli, who appears to have had some challenges with CFA in the past and says that he's been applying for financing since 2016. Since then, he only has a reference number. And this actually might speak to perhaps him not having filled in the proper process or having complied and as a result has been left feeling disgruntled. Help us understand how someone like Herbert perhaps needs to follow up with the system, which platforms or areas to go to make sure that he is also given some alternatives if CFA is unable to help him.
Yeah, if you've applied through 2016, where are we now? It's almost 4 years.
Yep.
It's actually,
if not 6.
Actually, it will be interesting to understand the details of that. But let me, before I respond to that question, because the unit that I'm under, or I'll give my contact details towards the end.
Sure.
Because the unit that I'm actually responsible for is to deal with those type of cases. But now, to respond to that it will be important to understand what is it that you applied for. 2016 sounds like a long time ready to have applied, and all you've got is a reference number. There are two sides to a story, obviously. But now, what I can say is that when COVID hit in 2020, we had a lot of programs that we managed, and I think my colleague from CEDA will talk to those. We had a lot of programs that we managed under the TRACT programs as well. We had the COVID relief programs. Mm-hmm. So the system that we were using at that time, there were a bit of challenges, but it's not as back as 2016, to be honest with you. So for me to respond directly to that particular question, it will be important to understand what are the details.
Sure.
What is it that which office did you apply? Because what we normally do, as I say, that the unit that I run deals with this type of cases. You might find that there are certain issues around compliance, around documentation, around viability, because as at that level, there are so many questions that we ask. We may not have the time now on the platform to talk to such questions, but what we do encourage our applicants to do is, one, give us all the documentation that we need. If you don't give us that, we won't be able to proceed with the application. The other one is, you need to be clear what problem are you solving for the community, because businesses solve problems.
Yes.
And the problem that you are solving must be in what we call a common funding template. So what we have done is, rather than saying to applicants, we need a business plan, there are so many templates of business plans out there in the market. So rather than frustrate entrepreneurs and say, give us a business plan, together with CEDA, IDC, NEF, and NYDA, we have put together what we call a funding template. Now, a funding template narrows down the things that you need to tell us when you pitch your business. If we believe that you complete that and then you pitch your business, and we look at the proposal and say, this is a business that we can invest in through that funding, because we can repay that particular loan, we're able to assist you. But if we believe that the questions asked in terms of, because as like I said before, that has got limitations.
Yes.
If we believe that you won't be able to afford the loan for whatever reason, maybe you need assistance in terms of further business plan development, access to markets, etc. That is where we work with our sister agency, CEDA.
Makes
and my
sense.
colleague will come in and unpack the things that they do on the side of CEDA.
Makes sense. Thanks for that, Don, and for adding so much detail. And I do realize I wish we had all afternoon to deep dive into some of these themes, because there's a lot of insightful information that can really assist our entrepreneurs. But enough, I'd like to come to you, sir, because you're representing CIFA, a separate organization and one with a different mandate to what we see with CEDA. Help us understand how CIFA's mandate does differ, and most importantly, how it is that you are able to assist entrepreneurs who might be on the line today in terms of understanding the qualifying criteria that they need to be cognizant of. Enough?
Thank you, Kuku. I'm really happy to be here. As a point of correction, I'm coming from CEDA,
yes,
which is a development agency. CIFA is a sister agency, so they're mainly focusing on the financial portion of the business, whereby we focus on the business development. So we give business advisory services, which are either augmented or amplified by an intervention. So, for instance, a client walks in through our doors and then they need advice on their business at whatever stage that they could be at. It could be introductory or maturity. We have interventions that can actually help, or programs that can actually help that client to succeed in their own businesses. Through our interventions, we are able to subsidize up to 90%. So basically, they get it for free. The 10% that they contribute towards the intervention, just to show a certain level of commitment, so that they don't take that intervention for granted. We also offer mentorship and coaching towards operating businesses. There are programs that we run for a period of 3 to 6 months, depending on the need, of course. And then we also have different NQF-aligned training programs that are developed by Learning Academy that are targeted towards our SMMEs. So some are sector specific, but mostly because we need to focus on the jockey. They're more about personal development. How do they become better entrepreneurs before they actually jump onto the horse? So we also have a CEDA technology program at our national office that focuses mainly on quality management systems. They offer grant funding up to about 1.2 million. It used to be 600. It was recently revised to about 1.2 million non-repayable grant. So through that, obviously, we're looking at return on investment. We're looking at creation of jobs.
Yeah.
So if you come through with a viable idea that can prove that there'll be a bigger change to the company through the use of technology, by so creating jobs and then making sure that that there's good enough return on investment, you are likely to be considered for the grant funding.
Exactly. Speaking to the bigger goal, continue for just a moment.
Okay, so basically we do this through our service delivery model, because we try to cater for everybody. So our service delivery model is divided into about 5 phases. It's basically meet, talk, start, build, and grow. at the mid stage, you're looking at about, a person comes through with 10 different ideas. They don't know which one to run with. So we help them conduct their own market research so that they can determine where their strong points are and which idea would actually work for them, And then once they get to talk, then we help them plan, and then we also look at legal forms of ownership. Where do you go? You go to CIPC. What do you register? You've got choices between a cooperative, the PTY. These are the advantages. These are the disadvantages. That kind of setup. And then the minute you go to start build and grow, that's where you are actually allocated a business advisor who's going to make sure that your business becomes operational. It's ready for funding. That's why we refer clients to CFA, say, okay, well, then you're at the stage. We believe that now you are fundable. Therefore, you can go see Don, and maybe he'll assist you with 1, 2, 3. So maybe through that, we'll draft your business plan and, that kind of thing to get you ready for submission.
Definitely. What I'm intrigued by here enough is another theme of compliance, as you've talked through, understanding what the goal, the vision of the entity is, and of course, even holding the hand of the entrepreneur. Backing the jockey was the word that you used in terms of making sure that they fully understand and can comply with the process. And the word compliance has come up in almost every conversation over the last 2 days, and is probably one of the reasons why many entrepreneurs do get frustrated when their applications for funding are not approved. Help us unpack this so much further in terms of this theme of compliance, and not necessarily specifically just for CEDA. We can talk through that as well. But overall, for entrepreneurs to understand that in order to scale your business, in order to be considered for financing and funding, how and why compliance remains such a critical factor. Enough, let's get your thoughts, and then I guess Cyrus would also like to come to you just to get you to expand on this particular challenge.
Okay, so I think the main problem about compliance is we've got different sectors.
Yes.
They've got different requirements, right? So, like for instance, I just made mention of a client coming through having different ideas. As soon as they realize that, if I was to go into construction today, I would need to be CIDB graded. I would need maybe to write an exam at NHBRC. All those, requirements, they see it as red tape. And, they don't want to put themselves through that to say, well, you know what, yes, I do want to compete with the big five. But for me to compete with the big five, now I've got to reach a certain grading with CIDB, and I've got to be at this level with NHBRC or whatever. So they back out. It's easy for them to actually back out of their stage and say that I'm not willing to put myself through that. So that's why you find that they'll always operate at that, an entry level or an introductory phase of the business, but they never really get to graduate to the growth phase. Because of now, there's that, hurdle that they need to get over, but they're just not willing to put in the time and the effort to make sure that they get over that hurdle. So that is always the case. That, when you tell the client that you need to do 1, 2, 3 for you to achieve this, it's okay, I'd rather operate on this level. It's much more riskier. I don't want to put myself through that. So they back out of the deal. So it's a program. After that, they tend to, invest a bit more.
Help us understand very briefly enough there, what does this program entail, and how does it assist you in shifting their mindset?
So what it does is that it's more like a boot camp. We put them through 6 days of intense training. You got to put together a business plan within 2 days. Present it before, prospective financiers. It pushes them to their limit. So as a result, when they walk out of the program, they tend to have that confidence that, nothing is going to stop me now, And it works a lot. For those that have what we refer to as empretekos, for those that have attended the course, we've seen change, big changes in those that have attended. So I would say at times it's more of a mindset than the red tape, or shall I say bureaucracy that comes with attaining or being compliant.
Definitely. Cyrus, I'd like to get your thoughts on this one as well as a representative of DT Capital. We do see that there's a lot of feedback in the chat, some who've attained great success with accessing financing from the likes of CEDA, someone else expressing some of their challenges that we've heard, and others also really being quite open to sharing some insight and details as to how they had to perhaps follow up in terms of getting clarity on this information. But what I'm learning from this conversation is we can go through the technicalities and how to seek assistance, and of course, more will be communicated created offline, as that is quite unique to the needs of the entrepreneurs. But in terms of the overview and the mindset that entrepreneurs need to prepare for, is that they need to come to the table prepared, Cyrus. And that probably tells us something else about the characteristics or the personal development that entrepreneurs need to develop within themselves to make sure that when they come to the table seeking financing, as highlighted, they know what they're looking for, but they're also willing and committed to put in the work to follow through with the level of compliance and, of course, some of the additional training that might take place here. So it almost seems as though you need the non-financial support ahead of the financial support. Is this an ongoing theme and one that does need to be shifted in terms of mindset for entrepreneurs?
That's a keynote, and that's something that we've seen consistently throughout the years. The entrepreneur might have that end vision of where they want to go and what their business would look like. You'd need to start with registration of your legal entity. You'd then need to either find a premises to house your business. You'd need to work on your quotes and evaluate what your setup cost would be. We work with each entrepreneur individually because each case is different. A startup might have completely different objectives and needs to a management buy-in, for instance, where all of the structures and all of the requirements are already in place, and those two might have a different requirement from an expansion. So each case is different, and we have to work with the individual and see where they are at this point and how to go to that next step. Funding is usually the last stage, when it's at that rollout, and there's a lot of work prior to that in order to get the application ready for funders.
Yeah, and I think that's quite important for us to really reflect on, to assist entrepreneurs to make sure that when they do go to the table, negotiating, requesting, and following through with the rigmarole, that they don't necessarily become despondent to the full application process. And perhaps, Don, you can also come in here to share some of your feedback in terms of how it is that institutions like yours, or I guess, can influence the mindset of entrepreneurs to understand that they do not and should not become despondent to the compliance process, and perhaps even before entering specific sectors, really need to seek clarity on the kind of rules and regulations that they need to comply with before just starting a business on a whim.
Yeah, no, spot on, Gugu, you're right. Because it's engagement like this that assists us to get there. As Sarah says, funding is the last in the list. Funding follows an opportunity. So as an entrepreneur, if you've identified an opportunity, you've done all the pre-loan support that Sida spoke about and other colleagues on the platform, we should make the intervention by funders to be easier. Because what we do find, which is unfortunate experience, is that entrepreneurs come to CIFA even before they are funding ready, long before they are funding ready. If I can share with you the statistics in terms of the inquiries that we get, the number of inquiries to the number of applications and the number of approvals, and we share that conversion rate, will be shocked. We somehow fund about 15% of the inquiries we get.
15%.
So 15%. And the reason being that and hence, I emphasize the issue of the ecosystem to say, if you start a business, it's a startup, it's an acquisition, it's an expansion. Understand exactly who in the ecosystem is playing in that particular space. CIFA addresses a particular gap, which is debt funding for businesses that are looking for up to 15 million rand. They don't have security and all those other things. There are other DFIs that do other things. So I think the first thing to do, hence I promote the screening portal, because the screening portal will be able to ask the right questions and direct you to say, is this the right partner to knock at? And if you're knocking at the right platform, looking at the right partner. Remember now, our regional offices and our deal makers will be excited to get that transaction because they know this is a transaction they can process, do proper due diligence, take it through the committees that it gets approved. No one wants to spend time on a deal that you know that it will never fly. So the issue of compliance and other things is very crucial.
Yeah.
Remember again, this issue of regulatory compliance.
Yes.
I think now touched on that. There's issue of industry compliance. Certain industries, there are certain things, certain rules of the game, the bylaws and other things. We need to be running compliant businesses. So if you're not compliant, there's no way if I can touch that application. The other thing on the issue of compliance is that we, as a lending institution, as CIFA, because we provide debt funding, we need to comply with the National Credit Act. And the National Credit Act says, don't do reckless lending because it's irresponsible. You don't want to provide funding to entrepreneurs that cannot afford it because you are creating a problem for that particular entrepreneur, for their kids, for their families, because they'll be having this debt that they can't afford.
True.
So the National Credit Act, that's a bigger compliance thing for us as a CIFA because we provide debt funding. What it says is that don't do reckless lending. So then what we do, because we're not a bank, we can't fund based on security. We look at your funding proposal and your cash flows and ask the question, can you afford to repay the loan? If we've got doubts that you can afford, then we won't be able to assist you. Because what entrepreneurs do is, when you look at affordability, it's about looking at cash flow projections. Remember, with funding the future of the business, we are not so much concerned about the track record or the history. That is important to understand that you understand the business and other things. But the most crucial thing is looking forward. So if you get debt from CIFA, one of the things that we check is to say, okay, how much do you think you'll make per month? As an example, you're saying this business is going to be making 200,000. How are we going to get to that?
Yep.
So we ask all those type of tough questions and stress test that and slash it maybe by about 20% to say, if you think you'll make 100,000, the economy out there, I think Dumisa did lay the macro factors around the economy where SMM is operating. We then say, probably, okay, you say you'll make 100,000, let's work on 80,000 rents. And we go to the expenses because entrepreneurs have got this tendency of overshooting projections, the top line, and underestimating expenses. So we then say, no. But one of the things that we do know, electricity is not cheap in the country.
Yep.
There are certain things that has not changed. Those are the realities that entrepreneurs play in. So those are the things that we stress test that. And I was just laughing when I was listening to say, a topic on funding cannot be a motivational topic.
Yep.
It's not something that you live here and say, you're punching the air, you're motivated. No, what you need to live here knowing is that a takeaway is that, okay, what is it that I need to do to access the funding? And these are the experiences that we're sharing. That's good.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Don, and making it very practical. As you say, what do I need to do? What do I need to know to access the funding? And perhaps, Ndumiso, we can come back to you here because many might perhaps be intimidated by the fact that the macroeconomics sounds so large and intimidating, but the truth is we feel it in the fuel price, we feel it in our pockets, we feel it in the most recent inflation data, and perhaps these are also considerations and key economic data points that we as entrepreneurs who are also consumers, who are also leaders and members of households, as Don mentioned, who are trying to maintain a standard of living, need to take into consideration as well when we apply this into the broader financial understanding of the needs of our businesses. And I know this is a tricky question though, and I'm not expecting you to do any forecasts for the year ahead, but for an entrepreneur who's listening now, and as Don mentioned, trying to calculate their forecasts and trying not to overshoot on those expectations and be very realistic, how should they be interpreting some of the most recent economic data that's just been released, information that might be released from the upcoming budget speech from the finance minister later this month, and of course comprehending the impact that this will have on their capital raising efforts for 2022?
Indeed, Gugu. I think for entrepreneurs, the operating environment, especially for the foreseeable future, is an important consideration when looking at where opportunities may lie, at least in the medium to long term. And I think in the South African context, as you quite rightly mentioned, there are some underlying drivers that are that would serve as some kind of cost push inflation effect when it comes to goods or services that they might be rendering. And it therefore becomes quite important in factoring those in. But when we look at how industries have been evolving as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in particular, and when we look at particularly deals that are undertaken in the venture capital space, we've seen an increase in technology-based businesses because of the evolution that is presently happening when it comes to digital transformation. Now, pre-COVID-19, there was indeed the notion around opportunities that lie within fourth industrial revolution type technologies and leveraging those in different industries. But increasingly now we're seeing that taking practical effect in organizations when they're saying, hey, actually, we're working from home, we need a particular process that needs to be automated. And now all of a sudden now you have RPA being a common jargon that is being used in being able to automate those processes. And that presents specific opportunities from an information communication technology point of view to leverage those kinds of evolutions and advancements in technology in these industries. This becomes quite important, Gugu, because when we look at venture capital data or deals that are done in the VC space, we're seeing that fintech on a year-on-year basis, when you compare 2019 to 2020, there's been an uptick in deals in the fintech area by just over 70%, which is indicative of the opportunities that lie in there. We also see agri-tech also being a common feature, seeing how technology also plays in the agricultural space and in consumer goods as well. This presents significant opportunities as well for entrepreneurs, regardless of the industry that you're operating in, to really conduct a readiness assessment of how technology is indeed affecting your business and the industry that you're operating in, because every single business is indeed touched by this. Again, this is particularly important, Gugu, because the South African economy, how it is structured, it is a knowledge-based and services-orientated type of economy. What does that mean? It means that the South African economy, based on how it is structured, it rewards knowledge and it rewards services from a value point of view compared to other industries. When you look at the nominal contribution of industries that contribute to South Africa's GDP, we see sectors such as finance, professional services, and then only you see manufacturing coming in, being as the industries that contribute the most towards the South African economy. So as an entrepreneur, it says, okay, great, I might be operating perhaps in the tourism sector, which is the services orientated. What is the role of technology in being able to leverage this kind of environment where there are restrictions and travel restrictions? All of a sudden now, even quite recently, I'm also learning about these things that are related to the metaverse and how people can buy property in the metaverse. What does that mean for tourism? Are there opportunities where people can monetize that? And this is where the entrepreneurial rigor and innovation also kicks in order to leverage the opportunities that exist in South Africa's operating environment, despite some of the risks or challenges that presently exist, but there are also these opportunities that do exist for entrepreneurs to be able to leverage in this operating environment.
Yeah, that's quite significant, and I think so important to me for entrepreneurs to be able to internalize this information and use that to then fully understand which sectors they should be entering into, where the opportunities do lie. And Don, as you mentioned as well in the chat service, that entrepreneurs also need to make use of data like the upcoming census, which we know is currently being collated by Statistics South Africa. But all of that, as Ndumisa also highlighted, will then feed into you identifying the opportunities that exist, how you can leverage technology as an enabler as well to play within those respective spaces. Gentlemen, just as the conversation moved into fifth gear, or maybe sixth, we've been told to wind it down. But that's only due to time pressures. But I thoroughly appreciate the effort and the time that you've shared with us today, each of you, for providing clarity, providing an understanding not only of the respective institutions that you serve and represent, but also of a bigger picture in terms of where we are regarding entrepreneurship in South Africa. I do want to remind many of our entrepreneurs who've joined us that whilst our guests have done their best to go through the levels of compliance, where it is that you can increase and improve on compliance from a technical point of view, that data and information is available on the respective websites that you can visit to fully comprehend what is required from the institution you'd like to seek funding from, and also from a sectorial point of view where there's regulation and compliance that you need to adhere to. But most importantly, this conversation has really been meant to, as a driver, to shift your mindset in terms of understanding where your business is, what kind of funding and financing opportunities you can explore, how they fit into your strategy, and of course, future projections and growth of your business as a whole. And most importantly, how to use that just as an enabler to expand on your business. Before the money comes to your table, you do need to shift and adjust your mindset and ensure that your strategy for your business is in line with the kind of capital that you're seeking. Well, those are just a few of the takeaways that I'd like to share from our speakers who've joined us today. Thank you so much to Ndumiso Hadebe, not forgetting enough Magli. Also, our two guests being Don Mashele as well as Cyrus Rastomji. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Really appreciate this conversation. Some uncomfortable truths that had to be accepted by entrepreneurs, but encouraging nonetheless in order to give us some practical tools to move forward here. Thank you once again to my panelists for joining us for this particular conversation. Well, I also want to thank you so far for participating with us in the Q&A and sharing some of your feedback. Very bold presentations that many of you have shared, and of course, some feedback on the kind of funding that some of you have been able to solicit. But I do strongly want to encourage you as well to make means of going out there and seeking feedback that is bespoke to your businesses as well as your company's needs. A reminder that before I introduce the last speaker for today, who will conclude the program, I'd like to strongly encourage you to make sure that you actively participate in making sure that you too continue to participate in the gamification. Dumiso might have mentioned technology, and I do see that one of you on the comments here saying that was great feedback from the guests, valuable insight from Dumiso. Gamification and technology is the name of the game. And we will also be allowing you to go back to the gamification segment, which is available under the main menu. If you do go to gamification, actively participate just to make sure that you're able to score and earn your points. And in just a moment, we'll be announcing some of the key winners of those top 4 Take-A-Lot vouchers that are worth 500 Rand. So if you still want to stand a chance to win them, please be sure to make sure that you do get them. Well, in just a moment, we will participate in a Q&A session and, of course, our Day 2 survey, where we want to strongly encourage you to share your thoughts on Day 2 and, of course, how the feedback that you've received here today has contributed to your understanding and the practicalities of running your business. In a moment, I am aware that we will be hearing from the CEO of Eskom Foundation, and we'll be seeking clarity in terms of how best we can wrap up on today's conversation there. But keep learning, keep sharing your feedback with us. And I guess before we do wrap up with the closing, let's get your feedback by completing our online survey. A reminder that this contributes to points that you will be able to earn, and of course, also allows us to take your feedback, absorb it, rework it, and as we heard earlier on today, Pcr will be able to use the information that you share with us today to pause, consolidate, and of course repurpose our conference to make sure that it meets your needs. So if we are available, and of course if you're keen to participate, we'll give you 2 minutes to quickly complete the online survey, and from there we'll hear closing remarks from Mr. Cecil Ramonotsi, who is the Eskom Development Foundation CEO, who'll join us in just a moment to close up today's presentation. But here you go, make your way to the online survey, tick off all those answers, and of course, join us back here where we will be able to give you the closing remarks for today. filled out that survey okay? Make sure you got all your answers in there. Well, if not, there'll always be some time for you to go back and, of course, share some of your feedback with us. But for now, as we do look to wrap up much of the information that we've received today, and, of course, acknowledging the excitement and, of course, the phenomenal effort and contribution that has been made by the Eskom Foundation to allow us as entrepreneurs to interact, to engage, to be empowered, to be informed, I'd like to hand over now to the CEO of the organization that made sure that you and I have certainly had a top-class experience over the last 2 days, tapping into the minds of experienced entrepreneurs and, of course, making sure that through their efforts, we are left so much more encouraged, informed, and, of course, given practical insights as to how to continue with our efforts. Please give a virtual welcome in the chat to the CEO of the Eskom Foundation, Cecil Ramonodzi. Welcome, sir. Looking forward to your presentation today.
Thank you. Program Director, Eskom Board Members, Eskom Group Executive for Government and Regulatory Affairs, Ms. Ntatho Menyuko, who opened the session yesterday, Eskom Development Foundation Board Chairperson, Ms. Surata Smulman, Eskom Development Foundation Board Members, Eskom Executive and staff, co-sponsors and partners and funders as I saw, esteemed entrepreneurs, finalists of the BEIC, members of the media, distinguished guests, good day. Small businesses are increasingly contributing to job creation, poverty alleviation, and the sustainable growth of any country's economy. Accordingly, governments and corporates around the globe launch initiatives, allocate resources, and introduce incentives to kickstart and sustain small and medium enterprises. South Africa is no exception, and Eskom as a state-owned enterprise is proud to make a positive contribution in this regard. The Business Connect initiative is one of many ways we play our part. Alongside other flagship corporate social investment programs, the Business Connect initiative reaffirms our commitment to supporting the government's programs aimed at curbing unemployment, improving skills pool, stimulating local economy, and enhancing equitable opportunities. It also confirms that addressing the South Africa's challenges will continue to require a multi-stakeholder approach. With that said, the Eskom Foundation remains grateful for its cooperative partnership with both government and the private sector in driving developmental programs. Eskom endeavors to continue making a small yet significant and targeted contribution through the foundation. As the national electricity provider, we are mindful for enriching lives. This remains one of our responsibilities. Fellow guests, we have come to an end of our 2-day session. As I officially close the event, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the organizations and organizers and all partners for ensuring a successful event. On behalf of Eskom, I want to thank you all for taking part in Business Connect initiative. I believe that you have found the gathering insightful and that you have identified similarities, points of connection, and opportunities to further unlock the potential of your business. I trust you will continue to maintain a productive relationship with Eskom, one that seeks to empower the South Africans. Keep well and stay safe. I thank you, colleagues.
Mr. Ramonodzi, really appreciate the closure that you provided today, and most importantly, the ongoing support to entrepreneurs that you've been able to share with us together with your colleagues over the last 2 days. Again, just indicates the level of commitment that Eskom and the Eskom Foundation is showing towards the growth and the future sustainability of our economy. Thank you so much for your time again, sir. I guess the big question that everyone wants to know is, when is this going to happen again for 2023? When will the dates be announced, if I may ask?
So the program starts as the business investment competition, and we start advertising around, inviting the entrepreneurs to participate around the July, August month. And the participants submit all their particular documents or submissions. We use a specific link in that regard, and then we do the local, regional adjudication process, and then we go on a national adjudication process where the finalists are invited. We then have a award session, which last year took place around the 14th of December, if I'm not mistaken. We would like to fast track that and make sure that it happens a little bit earlier, so that we can have the business connect with it, which comes immediately after the business investment competition. So it's a combination of the business investment competition awards or the participants in that particular program. So the program runs in tandem or in parallel with the business investment competition. But this is a very insightful and as well as a very productive platform, a 2-day platform where we are able to bring everyone along, including those that could not participate or could not manage to win the prizes that we offered during the final adjudication process.
Definitely.
So it also informs and provides that particular platform, and it helps us to also bring our partners along, as you may see. And I'm very much appreciative of the fact that we have CFA and CEDA as one of our partners in the public space as such. I would like to see a lot of private sector coming on board. I mean, one of the things that we need to do going forward as we do these corporate social investment initiatives, I think what becomes key is what we call crowdfunding and partnership going forward. So we cannot solve the problems of this country with a silo mentality. So we really need to rally together and assist as much as we can, given the financial constraints that we also as an organization are going through. Of course, because of the need to de-risk our operations from a stakeholder point of view, where we operate and have our business presence and operations, and as well as maintain our social license to operate, we have to continue assisting our communities as much as we can.
Certainly.
Including the entrepreneurs. So on that note, let me thank you as well for hosting this wonderful session, and as well as being wonderful to all of us and being open and being insightful with the panelists, and which I enjoyed, by the way. I was watching as of yesterday from the time the group executive did an opening remarks on this session, and I've seen very potential sharing of successes and failures of entrepreneurs, issues of tenacity, issues of what is required, and of course the frustrations that our entrepreneurs go through, especially when they approach us as public sectors looking for funding. I think we are improving, we are trying our best, the likes of CFA and CEDA, and my colleagues there have also expressed their innovative appetite in terms of making sure that we are assisting our entrepreneurs as much as we can. And my message to the entrepreneurs is please keep going, and this country is looking forward to the likes of your caliber and talent and God-gifted talent, and as well as attributes to take it to the next level. Let me stop there before I talk too much and I actually go over what is with us outside what is to be discussed today, or was intended to be discussed today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for indulging me, as well as our audience members. Mr. Ramunotsi, really appreciate your efforts and contribution today. That is the CEO of the Eskom Foundation, giving us some insight and, of course, clarity in terms of the business investment competition that we can participate in. And as mentioned there, you are all invited to make sure that you monitor the social media platforms where messaging will be communicated to you regarding the deadlines, timeframes, and, of course, requirements for you to enter. And like we heard from the previous two winners, make sure you enter, even if it is an hour to the deadline. Take your chances and make sure that you do so with a deliberate effort to make sure that you can actively participate in the program, gain more details and in essence into the knowledge that you'll experience, and of course can walk away from many of the workshops, financial and non-financial support that will assist you in growing your business. Thank you to all of you for sharing your feedback so far as we are getting to the part of the program that we will conclude on. Many of you saying thank you so much to all the presenters for their time. Thank you to the panel and the chair lady. I appreciate your efforts. All the best going forward. And everyone also saying, we also need to make sure that we continue with the success that's been attained over the last 2 days. Bongani Mkari also saying, I'm honored to have taken time to attend these sessions. Looking forward to more information and insights. Well, we are also honored that many of you have joined us to participate in conversation with us today and yesterday, and reflecting on some of the key initiatives and elements that we need to be cognizant of, particularly when it comes to rebuilding South Africa's economy and being key contributors to the lay of the landscape when it comes to growth. So we'd like to thank you for, number one, constantly making time to avail yourselves to gain more information and knowledge regarding opportunities that exist for you as entrepreneurs, being open to the mentorship and, of course, the lessons and learnings that have been shared by various speakers, and, of course, actively engaging and participating with fellow counterparts on this platform by sharing your stories, sharing your lessons, and, of course, also looking to implement these into your business. One thing that certainly is a significant takeaway for us to remember is that our businesses are made up of people. From leaders right down to the employees that we look to build and the teams we like to establish on, we really do need to go back to understanding the humanity of business. Together with that, building up on the necessary skills that we need to advance on and develop, understanding the ongoing concerns regarding building a sustainable business, all of these are part of the cogs that make up the wheel of sustainable businesses within a viable ecosystem, being the South African economy. So whilst you've gained a lot of information and data today and yesterday, we ask that you implement this to make it practical. But before we leave you, I do want to remind you that we made a promise to you yesterday morning, particularly if you're going to be one of our delegates and participants who actively endeavored to share and engage on the platform by earning their points. And many of you have done exactly that by completing several challenges, participating as well in many of the points earning systems that we have available. And we've come to that time of the day where we announce the winners on the leaderboard. A reminder that we have 4 Take-A-Lot vouchers worth 500 Rand up for grabs. And in our kind of economy, 500 Rand can go quite a stretch if you use it wisely. So we've got an update as to who the winners are. And I'm not too sure if we have a drum roll or perhaps there might be some horns, but maybe you can help do that for us here on this virtual platform. And if you do see a name of anyone and that you might be familiar with, congratulate them, add the applause, and maybe a trumpet to show how you might be supporting and their win so far for today. And boy, oh boy, how things have changed. I kept you updated on who the winners were or the leaders were on the leaderboard. Well, we've got the final tally now. I should hear from the auditors in the background, unofficial auditors in the background, that I can go ahead with the point system and announce the winners. And that's thumbs up from the team. So we've got, again, 4 vouchers worth 500 Rand to give to you from Take-A-Lot. And we've got 4 winners. In number 4 is, with 80 points, a reminder that 80 points is what all our top 4 participants have managed to earn and score. So all of them really reaching great insights and great heights in terms of the leaderboard. At number 4, Nkosikhona Phakathi, who earns a Take-A-Lot voucher. Herbert Nenweli, Gidiboni Sekgole, as well as Maurice McCurr, who made her way back to the number 1 spot to win a Take-A-Lot voucher. So to all of you, we say congratulations, we say halala, and maybe you can also add your applause in the chat service for us to actually acknowledge their win and, of course, their ongoing drive to participate with the gamification of the platform that we've had today. A reminder that it's been absolutely a pleasure to have you over the last 2 days and, of course, engage with many of you. A reminder that you can also complete the survey that we have completed online. Do make sure to make your way to the side note of the homepage, and you'll be able to also continue to share your feedback with us for us to come back and share revised views of these conversations with you in a year's time. Don't forget to keep the messaging out there on social media platforms and, of course, post using all the necessary hashtags and account names that have been made available. Most importantly, we also want to encourage you on your drive of entrepreneurship to keep going. No matter how challenging the environment might get, or, of course, difficult as we've witnessed in the last 2 years, there is always an opportunity, and it starts with self. It's been fantastic being with you for the 2020 Business Connect Conference brought to you by Eskom Foundation. From myself and the team, we wish you all nothing but the best of success going forward. Until next time, Take care.